Welcome, everyone. I want to call the June 1st City Council meeting to order. There are no excused absences. Everybody is here, and I want to start by asking everyone to join for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item of business is special business ID 2014, Bellevue College's 60th anniversary proclamation. I want to invite Dr. David May, the president of Bellevue College, to the lectern.
Oh, we're going over there.
Okay. Whereas Bellevue College was founded in 1966 and over the past 60 years has become one of Washington's leading institutions of higher education, serving more than 600,000 students across the region. I will add that includes all 6 of my children. Whereas Bellevue College has provided accessible and affordable educational opportunities that have benefited countless students, families, and workforce professionals in the Issaquah community and throughout the Eastside. And whereas Bellevue College supports students' success through academic, professional, and workforce training programs that strengthen the regional economy and create opportunities for future generations. And whereas Bellevue College contributes significantly to the East King County economy, with a regional study estimating the college annually infuses more than $185 million through its institutional operations and the economic impact of its graduates. And whereas Bellevue College partners with hundreds of local businesses and employers across the region that provide students with work-based learning, internships, and industry-aligned training programs, helping thousands of learners each year develop the skills employees seek in high-demand fields. And whereas Bellevue College provides lifelong learning opportunities for learners of all ages across the Eastside region, including Issaquah and surrounding communities. Now, therefore, I, Mark Mullet, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim June 1st, 2026 to celebrate 60 years of Bellevue College in the City of Issaquah, and ask the community to join me in recognizing and expressing their appreciation for the role Bellevue College has served in our community. In witness whereof, I hereby set my hand and seal the City of Issaquah on this first day of June 2026. Let's do the photo, and then I'll give you the thing. Want to do the photo first, Wally, or after? We'll do the photo, and then... Oh, we have 2 photos. I like it. You came with your own photo crew. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, President Martz, members of the council. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much for supporting the proclamation. And thank you for just a couple minutes of your very, very valuable time this evening. This is a relationship that extends even more than 60 years. The business and civic community in Issaquah was part of the push to create Bellevue College in the 1963 and 1965 legislative session. Without the support of this community, Bellevue College simply wouldn't exist. And as Mayor Mullet suggested, it has been more than 18,000 students in Issaquah and the surrounding area in the last 5 years. And so we really are educating this community to live, to work, to play, and to give back to this community. It's education, but it's also partnership with Costco to provide high-quality, low-cost childcare for their employees, for our students, and also for citizens here in Issaquah and beyond. And so the partnership extends and has extended far into the past for 60 more years, and I'm very, very excited to see where the next 60 years of partnership between Bellevue College and the City of Issaquah can take us. Thank you very much.
The next item of business is ID 2031, 2S LGBTQIA+ Pride Month Proclamation. I want to invite Jason Racy from Eastside Pride, Pacific Northwest, to the lectern. Oh, yes. Come on up. The more the merrier. Whereas June is recognized as Pride Month, commemorating the 1969 Stonewall Uprising and honoring the ongoing struggle for 2SL LGBTQIA+ rights, and whereas Pride Month celebrates the two-spirit lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual plus community who are our family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers, and who meaningfully contribute to our community in innumerable ways. Whereas the City of Issaquah is committed to being an inclusive and welcoming community where all residents and visitors, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, feel safe, affirmed, and empowered to live authentically. And whereas the city stands in opposition to discrimination and actions that seek to erase or marginalize queer and trans individuals, and remains committed to fostering belonging through inclusive policies, public engagement, education, and partnerships year-round. Whereas the city honors the resilience, creativity, contributions, and leadership of 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals and affirms its role as a sanctuary of dignity, equity, and belonging for 2S LGBTQI+ community, their families, and their allies to demonstrate its commitment to these same core values for all residents and visitors. Now, therefore, I, Mark Mullet, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim the month of June to be 2S LGBTQIA+ Pride Month in the City of Issaquah, and I invite the Issaquah community to come together to recognize the contributions and achievements of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, in witness whereof I hereby set my hand and seal to the City of Issaquah on this first day of June, 2026. We'll do the photo and then you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council. As you've mentioned, Jason Racy, who is the Eastside Pride Pacific Northwest Issaquah Liaison, and my name is Cheryl Smith, and I'm a leadership member of Eastside Pride Pacific Northwest also. Most importantly, I'm here as a proud parent of our transgender daughter. This is the first time saying these words in public. Why? Because Issaquah has created a space where my child can visit and know they're welcome, safe, and respected. And I feel safe here too as an ally. Issaquah's proclamation, flags, public art, and window decals send a message to your LGBTQIA, 2S+ residents, allies, and visitors that all are very welcome. These are important gestures of inclusion. Inclusion means continuing to show up, just not in Pride Month, but all year long. It means supporting policies that protect queer and trans people, like Juniper Blessing. It's about partnering with pride organizations like Eastside Pride Pacific Northwest. It's about celebrating the lives that we all live on a daily basis. Thank you to the City of Issaquah for what you're doing and that you continue to do for the pride communities, our families, and our allies. I'm grateful to be accepting this proclamation with Jason on behalf of Eastside Pride Pacific Northwest. Thank you.
The next item of business is ID 2038, recognition of facilities maintenance supervisor, Garth Harvey. And I think we're going to have Autumn come on up to do the honors. Yes, Garth, you have to come up as well.
Hi, I'm Autumn Monahan, the Administrative Services Director, and I've had the pleasure of working with Garth for many years. He has served the community of Issaquah for 14 years, leading our facilities team. He is taking on his next great adventure in Eastern Washington. We will be very sad to see him go, but I'm also very excited that you're taking this next chapter in your life. Garth is an exceptional leader for our facilities team who oversee a wide variety of facilities in Issaquah. That's not just office space, leased spaces, but also really complex facilities like a pool or a jail. And it's been a fun ride. He's always been ready to go for projects large and small. Large projects like how do we take years and years of stuff out of City Hall Northwest before selling it? to small projects like answering my call 2 weeks ago when a squirrel caused a power outage in this building ahead of a council committee meeting. He has always answered the call and been there to support us whatever we need. We were just doing some due diligence on a property we're purchasing for City Hall, and Garth was just scouring every inch of that building and reported back that he thinks he knows that building now better than his own home. And I would say that's fair to say all of the buildings you know extremely well, and your historical knowledge of those properties has been so helpful over the years. I'm so grateful for your leadership. I'm so grateful for your creativity and your problem solving. I've really, really enjoyed working with you. And it's thanks to your years of service that thousands of people have enjoyed our public facilities over the years, and that you've enabled all of us as staff to serve the community as well. And that's a remarkable legacy. So thank you so much, and good luck on your next chapter.
Thank you.
Thanks, Garth. You wanna say a few words?
You get a plaque. Jeannie's passing. Okay, mic is yours.
I wasn't really prepared for that, but that's okay. I just really want to thank the city for the opportunity to be part of the team. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure to serve the city, the staff, and all the citizens and my team. I couldn't have done it without my team. My team is an important piece. It was a very hard decision to make, but in the end, my wife's the one that kind of pushed me to the decision. So, again, just thanks for the opportunity, and I will miss everything. And everything I've learned here, I'm going to take with me. So there's an equestrian farm that's going to have a little piece of Issaquah in it, just from what I've learned.
Where's the first place you're traveling to? Ellensburg is not your normal first destination for someone to go to when they retire. Okay, the next item of business is audience comments. Comments made in person, or they can be made virtually. I'm trying to figure out how our virtual thing's working, but I think it's okay. Those of you signed up will be called on first. If you're on the phone, you can press *3. And if you did not sign up, do not panic. We will give you a chance to share comments towards the end. And with that, Madam Clerk, are there folks signed up for audience comments?
Yes, Mayor.
All right.
First up, I have Robert Rowe. I believe I see you online, Mr. Rowe. I will promote you to a panelist, and from there you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, Mr. Rowe, I have promoted you to a panelist. You should be able to unmute, and if you would like to share your video as well, you should be able to do that.
I see it. All right. Is everything, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay. First, I would like to begin by saying to the Eastside and Washington State, Happy Pride Month. That is very important to me, having a sister who's lesbian and married with 2 children. So that was awesome to hear the city council announce that. It's nice to see you guys again, especially the mayor. I wish I was here to comment about how awesome it is here to live in Issaquah Highlands and the convenience, what you guys have done for the Sound Transit bus stops, the beautiful views. But I have to say again, man, that the noise pollution here is insane. I know the comments that I'm reading are a little bit different. I'm just paraphrasing from what I wrote down. But I'd just like to know that what has been done to combat the noise from these delivery companies that come at 11:30 at night to 12:30 in the morning delivering. I live here in Discovery West Apartments, and I have talked a lot about this, and I have sent many complaints. One officer who I have talked to, I don't know if it's a real person or not, but it was a Officer Matthew F. He had a very hard time finding out why QCD delivery is delivering to Swedish Hospital at 11:30 at night, when one of the biggest food deliveries, U.S. Food, delivers at the proper time around 11 and 10 a.m. So I know the mayor is probably getting tired of this, but I am getting tired of this too. Because I'm tired of the lip service that I'm hearing from his office saying, oh, we'll get back to you, and they never do. So I'm requesting the city council to implement and enforce IMC N or 9.22 to levy fines of $100 for every offense. Mayor, I'm asking you directly, Mr. Mayor Mullet, would you like it if I parked a semi in your neighborhood at 11:30 at night? Sir, it is unacceptable. I have sent a YouTube link for you guys to watch, and I am more than 100 yards away from that hospital, what is necessary, but my whole apartment vibrates. So I thought it was just me. Next time, I'm bringing residents. Something must be done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Clerk Mueller?
Thank you. Next on our list is Fire Chief Will Aho.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Sorry. My name is Will Aho, and I proudly serve as your Fire Chief for Eastside Fire and Rescue, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As the city begins its discussion about the future of fire service, I wanted to provide some context for the conversations currently taking place at Eastside Fire and Rescue Board. For 27 years, the Eastside Fire and Rescue has been built on partnerships. The original agencies came together because they believed that a shared fire service model could provide high-quality emergency services more efficiently and more effectively than each agency operating independently. That partnership has served our communities well. Today, EFR protects nearly 229,000 community members across 277 square miles from 16 fire stations. We're governed by a board of directors with representation from each participating agency, along with advisory members from our contract agencies. At the same time, EFR's structure is unique. We do not have independent taxing authority. Instead, our budget is funded through contributions from our partner and contract agencies. That means each agency must determine how best to fund its share of regional fire and emergency services. As costs continue to increase, that model creates challenges not only for the individual agencies, but also for EFR's abilities to plan for stable and sustainable service delivery. Because of that, the EFR board began an education process earlier this year to better understand the available governance and funding options. Those options included continuing under the current interlocal agreement, evaluating annexation and or merging into a fire district, and considering a regional fire authority model. At the June EFR board meeting, the board will be asked whether there is a direction EFR should focus on for further education and discussion. That does not replace the authority of City Council, the fire districts, or any individual agencies. The final decision rests with each jurisdiction, and depending on the option, potentially the voters. The purpose of EFER's work is to make sure each community has clear information, understanding of the available options, and has a voice in shaping the future of the fire service. I appreciate that Issaquah is taking an active interest in evaluating its future fire service needs. My request is that the city remain engaged in the EFER process as well, so that Issaquah's voice continues to be part of the regional conversation. Eastside Fire and Rescue has demonstrated for nearly 3 decades that collaboration can protect communities well. As we look to the future, the goal is to ensure the same level of service remains sustainable, predictable, and accountable to the communities we so honorably serve. I am available for any questions today, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Chief. Are you able to stay till later in? Okay, excellent. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Clerk Mueller?
Yes, next we have Sarah Ryder.
Hello, Sarah Ryder, resident of Tallis. A few things I'm going to talk to you about today. First thing is my own thing, and then I'm going to represent the group that you've seen that we've brought today. The first thing I wanted to say is that I'm 100% on board with the tasers for our police department. That, to me, is very important to give them the best tools that they can use for de-escalation and their own safety. So I wanted to say that on behalf of myself, on behalf of the group. We have started a petition. I'm not going to read the whole thing. The first part you've already addressed with your resolution, and we thank you for that. We thank you that you've heard us. We read through the resolution. We think it's awesome. But the second part is we're still going to push for that city ordinance. I know that it's on the books for July, but we want to be very clear that we still want that. So we do have a petition with around 200 signatures from different people around Issaquah. I'm not sure if I present this to you or not, or how that works.
You can bring it forward to the city clerk. Yeah.
I'll read it
Oh.
first, and then I just didn't know how the handing of stuff goes. Don't know the decorum, if you will. But any further consideration of ALPR technology in Issaquah must be narrow in scope. An application is possible, pursue only if truly required. Citizens' rights and concerns must be protected as strictly as they can be. Examples of protections that should be implemented include the following. Data and imagery collected by ALPRs owned by the city of Issaquah and its departments must be stored in secure closed-loop systems owned by Issaquah city government, must be shown to be architecturally inaccessible to outside entities, must include only license plates, and emphatically must not include faces or identifying physical features of drivers or passengers of vehicles, must not be transmitted to servers or entities outside of Issaquah, must not be stored if it does not generate an alarm related to a wanted or missing person, stolen vehicle, active warrant, or serious criminal offense. And any privately owned ALPRs in the city of Issaquah must be positioned such that they do not collect data or imagery from public streets, from public property, or avenues of travel that the owner of the ALPR does not own themselves. So Issaquah city government has distinguished itself in the past few weeks by enacting important initial measures. We thank you for that so much. We know that you've heard us. So we appreciate you responding to our deep concerns that are held by Issaquah's residents and visitors. And it is now our opportunity to distinguish ourselves further by cementing in a law full and forceful protections for those same people. We ask Issaquah city government not to waste this chance. And now I can present our list of people, if that's cool.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There's no one further signed up to speak tonight, Mayor.
All right. Is there anybody else in the audience? Going once, going twice. Okay, with that, audience comments are closed. The next item of business is the consent calendar. I do not have any remarks on the consent calendar. Are there any committee chairs or chair designees who would like to report on any of the consent calendar items? Not seeing anything. I think our city clerk has minor updates to announce prior to approval.
Thank you, Mayor. Per the current council rules, 2 corrections were made to the draft minutes for the May 11th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting, which is consent calendar item C on tonight's agenda. Both corrections were on page 2 under agenda item B regarding the IPD Congressional Community Appropriations Grant. These corrections were distributed earlier today to the City Council for review. With approval of the consent calendar, you will be approving this revised version of the May 11th meeting minutes. Additionally, there was a typo located on AB 9183 for the 2025 Water Main Replacement Project, WT015. In the financial information section, $44,548,000 is cited to have been transferred. However, this should have been $44,548 as cited in the table just below on the same page.
Right. I mean, what's a couple zeros amongst friends? Okay, the consent calendar was distributed to council in advance. If authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have. They have.
All right, I know. I think we need 2 of those. Does any council member want to remove any items from the consent calendar considered under regular business? Okay, not seeing any. Is there a motion? Council President Martz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt the consent calendar with the distributed amendments and Scrivener changes.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, the motion is to approve the consent calendar as presented has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay, and that passes unanimously. The next item of business is public hearing, AB 9135, 2027-2032 6-year transportation improvement plan. We are going to open the public hearing. I'm going to invite Transportation Engineering Manager John Mortensen to present this item.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mullet. Good evening, council members. I'm John Mortensen, Transportation Engineering Manager. Give me a minute. I'll load up my presentation and talk to you about the Transportation Improvement Program. Tonight's topic is the 2027 to 2032 Transportation Improvement Program. The purpose of tonight's item is to review the updates to the 2027 to 2032 Transportation Improvement Program and to hold a public hearing as required by state law. The direction that the administration is seeking from the council tonight are with regards to the major themes and changes to the Transportation Improvement Program, specifically the emphasis on smaller scale projects, prioritization of performing maintenance projects over new construction, and the more extensive use of debt, specifically funded by the Transportation Benefit District sales tax revenue that will sunset in the future. But before I go into those, I want to give a little bit of a background. The hierarchy of how this all fits together is the city has the comprehensive plan that has the vision, goals, and policies that then feed into the functional plans like the Climate Action Plan and the Mobility Action Plan. And out of those plans, they feed into the Transportation Improvement Program. A little bit more of a background. The city is required to adopt a 6-year transportation improvement program every year according to RCW 35.77.010. And the way the city of Issaquah does this is in odd years, like last year, the transportation improvement program is part of the larger capital improvement plan. And this is a time when the city can make larger scale changes because the city council has the opportunity to weigh the different projects, whether it's a transportation project, a facilities project, a park project, and many more. And then in even years, like this year, it's done as a standalone process. and for the most part is a limited update. The projects that are in the Transportation Improvement Program are used to establish impact fees as well as bicycle and pedestrian mitigation fees. And the projects that are in the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, some of them are projects that are to help prepare the city for growth that will be coming with the Regional Growth Center, as well as other projects, though, are in response to community needs. And inside the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, there's a project summary that explains what the project is, the estimated costs, the potential funding sources, and when the project may occur. And I do want to emphasize that the Transportation Improvement Program, it is a planning document. It is not the budget that here later on this year, the council will be deliberating the 2-year biennium budget, and that is the actual budget that puts into motion what projects will and will not be done in the next 2 years. So why are projects included in the 6-year TIP? Sometimes they satisfy the goals in the Mobility Action Plan or the transportation element of the Comprehensive Plan. Sometimes they come out of other plans or studies like the Transit Study, and I'll talk about a project that came out of the Transit Study. Some of the projects are a result of feedback that the administration receives from the community, whether it's through See, Click, Fix, or just talking to residents out in the community. They also meet the goals of the administration, specifically the prioritization of maintenance, implementing small-scale projects that have an immediate benefit to the community, and including relieving congestion for vehicles. And the update also includes revisions based on revenue projections to match current forecasts. Inside this year's packet was an update from last year's capital improvement plan and how the projects were prioritized with last year's CIP process, which involved legal mandate or addressing life and safety concerns like the Black Nugget retaining wall. Community priority, that's a big part of why we do a lot of these projects, like the Northwest Sammamish Road non-motorized project. Community livability and quality of life. Climate resiliency or environmental benefit. The ability for the administration to deliver the project. Replacement or capital maintenance of existing infrastructure like the pavement management program. And a long-standing commitment. As part of this TIP process, the administration spent a lot of time working on balancing revenue with expenditures. And there's a number of pressures that were under for these projects. One of them was a delay in implementing the school zone safety camera deployment, which reduced revenue in the school zone safety fund. This update also proposes being more aggressive with implementing debt from the Transportation Benefit District to implement projects so that way the community can receive the benefits sooner rather than later as project costs continue to rise. On the expenditure side, there's demands for real estate excise tax in last year's CIP that surpass the revenue that is coming in. And so as part of this, the administration had to make some adjustments to align the actual revenues that are coming in with the expenditures. And then there's a lot of regional and national global economic factors creating uncertainty. Oil costs and diesel fuel costs are a big impact on the cost of implementing these projects. So now I'm going to go over the update in the proposed 2027 to 2032 Transportation Improvement Program. The themes of this update were an emphasis on smaller scale projects that could be implemented so the community could receive the benefit rather than waiting year after year while a project slugs through design. Prioritizing maintenance over building new, and the more extensive use of debt, specifically funded by the Transportation Benefit District sales tax that is set to sunset. Some of the specific project changes are for project TR 12, the Front Street and Sunset left turn improvements. That was added to the 6-year program. And then the Gilman Bridge Rehabilitation Project. This was one that has been in the budget and council has approved it, but just the timing of when we do the tip and when we get the funding for the project, it wasn't in it, so it's not a new project, it's just added as a technicality. Some of the projects that moved up are the signalization project at Front Street and Dogwood, as well as the pavement repair job at the location of 190th Place and 191st Avenue Southeast. This is a location up the road from the Cougar Mountain Zoo, where the pavement's in really poor condition. And the reason why this project was moved up is there's going to be a new stormwater requirement beginning in July of 2027 that would make this project prohibitively expensive. And so the goal is to permit this project before the change. That way it is an affordable project. And a couple projects were moved out into the future. The Central Issaquah Multimodal I-90 crossing was moved out. The administration recently completed a planning study that identified a preferred location for the crossing, but there are some council concerns about the project and the overall costs and how it would look along Gilman Boulevard. And so that project's been moved to the future years rather than advancing it in the next 6 years. And then TR 84, the Transit Signal Priority Pilot Project. And this project was not moved because transit signal priority isn't a priority. It still is a priority for the administration. However, a pilot project was not the best avenue to go about doing that when reading King County Metro's guidelines for transit signal priority projects, that it's better to do that along, so that, let me back up. The pilot project would have implemented transit signal priority at one location, but the guidelines talk about how it's much better to do it along a corridor, and there's a certain bus frequency that the city of Issaquah does not have that is the best practice for implementing transit signal priority. So it's still a priority, but the city needs more buses, and the recommendation from the administration is to do this as part of a corridor with buses rather than at a spot location. I'm going to talk a little bit about the project TR 012, the Front and Sunset Left Turn Improvement Projects. So this has been a concurrency project in our long-term project list for many, many years. And it came to the forefront in 2023 when the administration did a transit study that looked at improvements that the city can do to help improve access, speed, and reliability of transit. And this is an intersection that has currently the 554 bus coming from Newport Way onto Sunset, and then continuing up to the Highlands and then in reverse. And then starting this fall, the revised 556 bus is going to go along Gilman and then front to Sunset, and then likewise in reverse. And so this project is intended to improve the speed and reliability of the bus routes along here. And what it will do is redesign the intersection on the west leg for eastbound traffic. It'll add a through right turn lane and then have a standalone left turn lane. And then what's called phase 2, and depending on what the traffic analysis and the cost estimate determine, as well as a grant application. Oops. Hold on. Stop sharing. Just give me a minute. Oh, it is not letting me share. There we go. All right.
Oh, you're back.
Wonderful. And so then the second part of this project would work on the east leg of this intersection where it would convert the existing right turn lane into a right through lane, and then the existing through left turn lane would become a left turn lane. And these improvements will reduce congestion for everyone at the intersection, but especially for the bus movements. Now I'm going to talk about some of the primary drivers for changes to existing projects, and that one of the things that we did for the two Newport projects, the SR 900 to 54th and Maple to Sunset, we created, and as well as the strategic small capital project, what I call tiplets. So right now, Newport Way, SR 900 to 54th, it is TR 022. Well, what we did is we created TR 22A, TR 22B, and TR 22C. And the reason why we did it is that project is going to be constructed into phases, and we wanted to show, as part of this update, how that project would get constructed in phases to add a little bit more transparency. And then the strategic small capital project, one of the things that this update did is it identified some larger small projects that would be good candidates for the Transportation Improvement Board's Complete Streets Grant. And one of the things that the Transportation Improvement Board likes is to see projects listed in the public agency's TIP. And so we wanted to start listing those to help improve our chances of receiving external funds, as well as to also show the community the specific small improvements that the administration is planning to make. I mentioned a little bit about TR 101, that project was moved up in order to get permitted before changes to the stormwater requirements. Additional costs were added to TR 033, that's the Black Nugget retaining wall, based on where the design's at. The cost estimate has increased. And then TR 80, 90, 91, and 92, these are all the ITS replacement projects, and those have been updated based on the current replacement schedules. The projects listed here are the ones that the administration is proposing to use Transportation Benefit District back debt for. That is signalization project at the intersection of Front Street and Dogwood. This is one that the administration has heard a lot from the Transportation Advisory Board that this is a priority project. TR 23A, Newport Way, Maple to Sunset. Next one is a big priority for the administration, TR 028, Northwest Sammamish Road, Non-Motorized Improvement Project. TR 99, this is a bridge scour repair project for the bridge that goes over Issaquah Creek along Southeast 56th Street. It's to help protect the lightweight fill material on the east side of the creek from potential damage due to creek scour. And the TR 101, 190th Place, and 191st Avenue project. Something to consider for the Transportation Benefit District back debt. The TBD sales tax expires in 2034, and the council at that time may choose to reauthorize the tax or not. If the tax is renewed, then TBD revenues can likely support any debt issued for a project throughout the life of the debt service. However, if the tax is not renewed, then the debt service for these projects will need to be paid for from another source, such as the general fund. The Transportation Improvement Program went to both the Transportation Advisory Board as well as the Environmental Board. I'm going to talk a little bit about the feedback that the administration got from those boards. On March 25th, the administration presented the tip to the tab, and generally the feedback supported the proposed changes. Some of the members on the tab questioned the criteria from the Mobility Action Plan and wanted to increase the objectivity to the criteria in the mobility action plan that was used to evaluate these projects. And some members had questions about the use of debt as a financial practice and expressed concerns about additional non-permeable pavement. The board also highlighted safety concerns and a preference for bicycle and pedestrian facilities as a priority in the TIP. On April 16th of this year, the TIP was presented to the Environmental Board. And again, the Environmental Board generally supported the proposed TIP updates. Members noted several corridors for additional bicycle facilities and the potential to protect and enhance tree canopy throughout the TIP. And board members had questions about specific projects, jurisdiction, working with King County Metro, and e-scooter programs. And then on May 12th, the TIP was presented to the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. And again, the support was generally, or the committee generally supported the TIP updates. Members noted the importance of having the Northwest Sammamish Road non-motorized improvement project as part of the 2027 to 2028 operating budget, not losing bicycle and pedestrian facilities while focusing on congestion relief. And there's a brief discussion on impact fees. The direction that the administration is seeking from the council are the major themes and changes with this update, specifically the emphasis on smaller scale projects, the prioritization of maintenance over new construction, and the use of debt specifically funded by the Transportation Benefit District with tax revenue that is scheduled to sunset. And we did add a slide to the presentation to talk about projects that add bicycle and pedestrian facilities. I know there were some concerns based on the performance metrics that were reported out. And so the proposed 6-year transportation improvement program has over 16,000 feet of bikeways proposed to be constructed. And I've got a list here of the projects that make improvements to pedestrian or bicycle facilities. The timing and next steps. Right now we're here on June 1st to conduct a public hearing. And then on June 15th, the administration is going to propose council adopt the Transportation Improvement Program. And then once it's adopted, within 30 days, the administration will submit the 6-year TIP to the state. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, John. Councilmember Joe is Chair of the Mobility Infrastructure Committee. Would you like to summarize the committee's recommendations on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We reviewed this particular topic at our Mobility and Infrastructure meeting on May 12th. It does highlight some of the topics that were discussed at our May 9th retreat. We appreciate the administration's efforts to find small projects that we can get done in a timely manner to show that we're making improvements to transportation in the city of Issaquah so that people that live in the city are able to get from point A to point B, whether it's from school to Costco or whether it's from Target over to the park and ride or the park and ride in the Highlands. So we do appreciate the emphasis on the Dogwood intersection stoplight and the Sunset stoplight as well. The committee was generally in favor of the proposal from the administration. There was an emphasis on exploring and continuing to explore other ways to get funding, including councilmatic bonds in the future as a point of conversation for us so that we can continue to make those improvements along the way. I won't speak directly for Council President Martz, but he did put in a pitch for councilmatic bonds, and also wanted to talk a little bit about the wall behind Fred Meyer and the potential liability and the potential way that we need to seek additional funding from our partners with King County. But overall, the committee was generally in favor of this going forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I'm going to open this public hearing at 7:58 p.m. and we're going to go back to audience comments. If you're joining virtually, please raise your virtual hand or send the host a chat message. And Clerk Mueller, do we have folks signed up in the room for audience comments?
I don't see anyone at this time with a raised hand virtually. We did have one individual sign up online. I'm unsure if they are virtual or in person. I have Earl Piggott.
Looking for Earl. Not seeing Earl online or in person. Is there anybody in the room who has a desire to speak on the transportation? Oh, come on up. Let's go to the lectern in the middle and you just have to hit the button.
Thank you. There's a dangerous turn on Newport Way.
Can you please state your name and relation
Oh, I'm
to
so
the
sorry.
and
I
like
do this. I've
relation to
done
the city?
this.
Thanks. Go ahead.
I'm Margaret Escobar, and I live on Squawk Mountain, and I've lived in Issaquah for 25, 30 years. There's a dangerous turn of where Sunset goes into Mountain Park Drive and crosses Newport Way. I live up on Squawk Mountain, and so I've seen numerous accidents there. Both lefts are dangerous, both if you're going straight across and people are making lefts in front of you, if you're making a left onto Mountain Park Drive from Newport Way, there's a kind of a rise and you can't see the car coming, and people are very impatient. I mean, I've seen probably weekly almost hitting each other, and I've seen several dangerous accidents over the years. Is there a plan to put dedicated red light left turns on that crossing? It's pretty crowded, it's pretty well traveled, and there's no dedicated like left, like you have to make a left and judge traffic in order to do it in all the directions. I think it would be, I know it's costs money, but it would be a move to make the city safer.
Excellent. Thank you very much. What I would suggest is leave your contact information with our city clerk, and then we can get back to you in terms of your specific ask and by email. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the room who would like to make comments? Okay, not seeing any. The audience comments are now going to be closed. City Councilor, is there any objection to closing the public hearing? Okay, not seeing any. The public hearing is now closed. We are now going to go to council questions for John. Looking. Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the great presentation and all the work that's gone into this, all the feedback that's been requested and implemented. The first question I've got is on that feedback. One of the things that you mentioned was that for both TAP and the Environmental Board, that they highlighted safety concerns and a preference for additional bike and pedestrian facilities as raising in priority in the tip. I appreciated the list of projects that you presented that included elements that touch on our pedestrian and bike facilities. But I wanted to know what was altered in the plan as a result of that feedback. Was anything altered to incorporate their feedback versus what they were originally presented with?
There were no alterations based on that feedback.
Is there an opportunity to take their feedback into account and reprioritize based on the board and commission's feedback?
My preference would be to, if there is a change in the prioritization, to include it as part of the budget deliberations for the 2027 to 28 budget, biennium budget, just because, and yes, the tip could technically be changed, but my recommendation would be to, if there is a desire to make changes, to the transportation projects in the next 2 years, to do it as part of the budget process, not as part of the TIP process, but I think both are possible.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. John, I'm wondering, toward that same concept of pedestrian bike infrastructure and all of that, how should we determine or kind of understand the fact that we have separate impact fees set up for bike and pedestrian versus transportation? Do we have a sense whether or not having a specific, much smaller budget for bike and pedestrian infrastructure increases access to funding for that type of project, or whether it decreases their focus within the larger transportation budget? Do we know how that funding model impacts our choice of projects and whether or not we can effectively do something?
Oh, thank you very much. I love that question, Councilmember Walsh. I'll try and be concise and not go on too long of a rant here, because this is something that I'm really excited for. So the way Issaquah has it right now is, a long time ago, a council decided that wanted to fund non-motorized projects, and so the city has a bike ped mitigation fee that funds bike ped projects. And then as part of our transportation concurrency, where there's an adopted level of service at intersections, we have traffic impact fees. And then I will say that traffic impact fee funded projects do include bike ped facilities like Newport Way. The challenge that we have with the bike ped mitigation fees is it's a short list of projects, and the city has not updated the traffic impact fees or bike ped mitigation fees since 2019. And since 2019, the city has done a lot of work to prioritize multimodal transportation. And the projects that we want to do with the non-motorized fees are different than what we wanted to do back in 2019. And so the challenge is there's a short list, and not a lot of the projects on that list are the projects that we're hearing from the community that the community wants us to build. So the administration has also heard from the city council a desire to lower traffic impact fees. And there's been some changes in state law since the city last adopted traffic impact fees in 2019, and that traffic impact fees can also be used to construct bike and ped facilities that are standalone bike ped facilities, not just tied to capacity projects for cars. And so I think that in the future, a good policy discussion would be how to go about looking at possibly lowering the traffic impact fees. What does the city want for concurrency, and how those could be utilized, whether it's for a congestion relief project, for growth from development, or how it could be used for bike ped facilities. And so I hope I'm answering your question, but that's how I see it.
Okay, I really appreciate that related to what our financial situation is with this separation, and hearing that we can use some of those traffic impact fees or mitigation fees for bike and pedestrian pieces. But I think I also heard, and I just want to clarify there, that maybe we don't have the most up-to-date list of bike and pedestrian projects that the community has said that they're interested in included in this TIP. And so is there a plan to do a better job of updating that and maybe taking the feedback that we heard from TAB?
So I would say that the projects in the TIP are ones that are community priority. That the ones that are, it's the list of projects that can use the bike ped mitigation fees are not necessarily the ones that are the highest priority right now. And I also would say that when the city updates the traffic impact fees, one of the things that I would want to evaluate is merging those two programs together now that there's been a change in state law. So I would say that the 6-year TIP has a lot of the community's non-motorized priorities. For example, there's a project to do a interim sidewalk project on Issaquah Pine Lake Road. That's one in the 9 years I've been with the city. I've been hearing over and over again residents saying, we just want to walk to the Highlands. And then I'd have to tell them, well, we got the $17 million project. And then they would say, oh, I don't want to wait. I just want to safely walk. So trying to implement these projects that we've been hearing from the community, it just is, instead of using, well, that wouldn't be a location probably to use mitigation fees, but trying to utilize the revenue that the city has to the best extent possible to meet the community's desires is what we're always working for with this transportation improvement program.
All right. So action is being requested at the June 15th City Council meeting. However, if you have feedback on the major themes and changes with this update, this is sort of the time to share that feedback. Council President Martz.
So I had a whole stem winder of a speech at committee. I'm going to save that stem winder speech if I need it on the 15th. I'm meeting with Manager Mortensen and Director Moon earlier on the day on the 15th, and I'll save my stem winder speech. It's about TRO 28, which has been, I won't go into it. We all know how I feel about TRO 28 and how long we've been waiting to put sidewalks into South Cove. So hopefully my conversation will go well, and I won't ever share with that stemwinder speech again. Thank you.
Well, I think the administration has been very public that the 27-28 budget is going to fund through bonding the TBD tax that non-motorized improvements so they can get into the town. Councilmember Boyd.
I have a question, John, and if you can't answer it, then I apologize for not asking you in advance. Not keeping to the no surprises rule here, but just about the Black Nugget retaining wall. You mentioned that the cost has gone up since initial estimates, but I know back on my tab days, we had looked at a couple of different alternatives, and I don't know if the cost increase, does it get to either of those alternatives? I believe the lowest cost alternative had been chosen, but if you could just give a little more context on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so the preferred alternative that is proceeding with design, it is the lowest cost one. The solution is to build a retaining wall in front of the existing retaining wall, and the costs are just due to geotechnical conditions and needing to do more work for that.
Okay, Councilmember Nichols.
One more, and this is on how things come off. Are we going to take some things off of the tip at some point? I mean, the one that pops out to me is the Central Issaquah multimodal crossing. I wasn't on council at the time, but my recollection of council's reaction to that was not positive. To be not as blunt as I could be. And it's also extremely large. I think that was $100 million or something like that. So that has to be
120, I think, yeah.
Lots of things. When are we planning to address some of those things that are likely not within the realm of things that the council or the city will actually take on?
The answer to that is, as part of looking at the traffic impact fees, that will be considered. And so whenever we do a concurrency update, we always like to look at a few of the projects and see if they are needed or not needed. In the last concurrency update, a project was eliminated along Northwest Sammamish Road that would have widened the already wide road one more lane in each direction. But in order to look at which ones to take off, it needs to be done holistically, because right now the city hasn't adopted level of service at signalized intersections of D or better, except for 6 locations where they can be at E or F. And so if we start taking projects off, we need to be careful to make sure that the city is either able to still meet the adopted level of service, or to consider other things. So, and I don't know what would happen if the city does not construct the I-90 crossing. But some of the things that I would want to look at are, when the city got its regional growth designation, one of the requirements was to have a crossing of I-90. So I'd want to have a conversation with PSRC to see, okay, is that still the case? Because I'd want the council to know that as how it would impact future things with Issaquah. And then I'd also want to know, okay, if we don't construct it, what happens to the rest of the transportation system? Because it does carry a lot of cars in our future traffic model. Also understanding that it is really expensive and it does make the traffic impact fees more expensive. So would the council, if, and this is a big if removing that project would make it so that way intersections were no longer meeting the level of service, there's a couple of levers. The council could say, well, we want to increase the assumption of trips that will be done by transit, bicycle, walking, and then maybe that might solve it. It could be that the council could say, well, we want a lower level of service because we don't want to do this project. So maybe the level of service becomes E instead of D. So there's a number of possible outcomes that got to go through a policy discussion before we can start eliminating those long-term bigger projects.
Deputy President Jang.
So kind of going on to that policy question, I mean, so it seems like we're currently evaluating transportation projects based on, you know, how well car traffic is moving through our city. And given, you know, our future vision for what type of community we want around light rail, given, you know, we have climate goals, presumably we probably want to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And so I'm wondering, you know, is that ever included as a metric for evaluating transportation projects? And if so, you know, how would that get into the policy conversation?
I'll answer it two ways. So the first way is here at Issaquah, we have as part of the Issaquah Climate Action Plan, a goal to reduce vehicle miles traveled. I forget the details, but there is a goal for a reduction. And we're working on ways to measure it. Right now, there's regional ways to measure it. We recently, as of today, got access to a software subscription that I think will allow us to be able to measure vehicle miles traveled. So that's what we're currently doing to look at vehicle miles traveled. And then there are some agencies like the city of Seattle where instead of having their level of service be delay at an intersection, it is vehicle miles traveled. And so that could be an alternative. There would be pros and cons that could be discussed as part of a policy discussion.
Great, thank you. And do you have a sense of when that policy discussion might occur?
Well, I don't know the exact schedule. I've been working on it. I do know that the council did say that lowering traffic impact fees by the end of '27 was a very high priority.
City Administrator.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The Planning Development Environment Committee has tasked staff to sort through this issue of all of our impact fees. We are hoping to come back to the committee in the next 60 days with some ideas with that. I mean, what we are struggling with is the desire to perhaps change the trajectory of some of our projects along with the desire to charge less fees. And so we're going to be bringing some options to PDE. I think at that point the committee can decide if they wish to move this up to the full council for discussion or discuss it in committee for some time. But what we're certainly hearing from Planning Development and Environment is they would like us to address the impact fee question sooner than later.
Great, thank you.
Council President Marks.
So I want to expand on Councilmember Nichols' comments on the Central Issaquah multimodal I-90 crossing. Yes, your memory is correct. It wasn't necessarily that the council, I don't think the council expressed an opinion about having a I-90 crossing. They expressed opinion about the study that was commissioned and presented to us. And the majority of the council, as I recall, did not like that study and chose not to formally accept it. I believe we paid the nice people their bill, but we did not want that study entered into the record because we had such concerns about the contents of that study. You know, it is interesting to hear that that is an essential part of the future of the city, because as I recall, one of the things that we did not have in that was a full traffic study. We did not Torsten the problem, right? Torsten being our traffic consultant who does such amazing studies for us. I don't believe we got levels of service associated with that potential overcrossing, and this was one of the challenges that this council considered when choosing not to formally accept that study. So if in fact the administration at some point wants to come back and revisit this topic, I think that a pretty comprehensive conversation needs to occur about what that study would need to contain to get a more favorable response from the council. Thank you.
One, I think I share your concerns that the project does not seem financially feasible, but I think to John's point is we make those kind of changes, we have to do it thoughtfully to understand the impact. So I think that's the plan as we move forward this year, is to figure out, yeah, what the impacts are. Is it, yeah, I think there's an agreement that projects.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah. City Administrator.
Director Moon, who's in the audience, good evening, has texted me to remind me that the city council did accept the report, but not the recommendations on the report. So just to make sure that the record's clear.
I stand corrected.
Okay, so I guess the guidance we're looking to get is if this returns on the June 15th meeting, after this discussion having just happened, would the preference have it be on consent or on regular business? And I will reiterate that the budget will 100% fund TR 028 and finally build the trail from South Cove into town. But once again, this is looking for guidance. Councilmember Joe.
Mr. Mayor, I would ask that the public hearing remain open and that we continue it to the next council meeting so that the public can have time to analyze this and then come back and comment, and then we can close it out on the regular agenda at the next meeting would be my preference.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of continuing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. So we will continue the public hearing on the TIP, and then we will come back on June 15th, and we will have another opportunity for public input, and then at that point, the plan will be to then go to regular business, and the council can adopt the TIP or not at that stage. Excellent. Okay, so that concludes that discussion item. We're now going to go to regular business. Agenda Bill 9178, Issaquah Police Department's Congressional Community Appropriations Grant. We're going to have Dale Markey-Krimp.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Dale Markey-Krimp, Assistant to the City Administrator, and I am here tonight to present on the Issaquah Police Department's Congressional Community Appropriations Grant. The purpose of my presentation this evening is twofold. One is to seek the council's approval for the acceptance of the grant for conducted energy devices. I will also, like Sergeant Asbell, call them tasers for the remainder of the presentation, for the Issaquah Police Department, and to seeking council passage of a proposed resolution outlining the terms of the grant acceptance, the cancellation of the Flock Safety Memorandum of Understanding, and setting a policy requirement, a policy adoption requirement for any city action on automated license plate reader technology. Bless you. I don't know where it came from, but bless you. The administration is recommending that the City Council approve the resolution accepting the grant funds and outlining how the grant funding will and will not be spent. But first, a little bit of background, or a lot of bit of background. So in taking us all the way back to January 2025, potentially late December 2024, when the Issaquah Police Department was first considering applying for this grant. At the time, they actually initially were considering two separate applications, one for tasers and one for ALPR technology. In conversation with Representative Schreier's office, the administrator of the grant, it was recommended to them to combine those two requests into one single request. Also, it became clear to the police department at the time that they were considering this that while the council was likely quite familiar, we found out at the last meeting, some very familiar with tasers, on the receiving end of a taser, they were probably less familiar with ALPR technology, and that whether or not our grant application was accepted, whether or not that grant application was then funded, the police department did need to come to the council to share about ALPR technology in the first place, even though the city had no money at the time to fund it. Then you can see this beautiful green line in the middle of this lovely timeline. It's meant to represent a long gap, but it is a very short line. The city was notified in January of 2026 that the grant request was going to be funded. This is kind of a long delay, but a lot of time had passed and a lot had happened in the community between the original submission of the grant and finding out that it had been funded. As is shared in the materials for tonight, not only did we have federal immigration enforcement activity in our community that really called into question the safety, security, and data privacy of flock safety camera systems. We also had a new mayor who had an opportunity to meet with the police department and get clear on what their priorities were, what the funding needs were, and what technology was most needed by the department. Simultaneously, around this early January time, our state legislature was considering regulation at the state level of ALPR technology. So, in March and April, we heard from the community loud and clear, and also members of the council, that there was some extreme reservation around the city's adoption of ALPR. The mayor also met with the police department to get clear with them on how they wanted to use this money that had been awarded. And on April 6th, IPD, knowing that tasers were the singular priority for them at this point, they went back to Axon, who is the supplier of our taser and our body-worn camera equipment, to get an up-to-date quote about how much it would cost. At that point, the IPD learned from Axon that the cost of the tasers, as originally quoted, were going to take up nearly all of the awarded grant money. And so they explored other options for how they might spend the very small amount, the just over $4,500 remaining dollars in this grant award. On May 11th, folks much closer to this technology than I came and presented to the council about both the grant and the new proposal, which I have on the next slide, on how to spend the money. So again, just to reiterate as a bit of background, there was an initial request that was made in the grant application for tasers and for flock safety cameras. That request was updated when we went back to Axon to request a new quote for tasers, finding that it would take nearly all of the appropriated dollars of the grant towards tasers. It was then decided that a better spend of that remaining $4,500 would be on replacing the recently broken interview room camera system in our police department. Before I talk very briefly about tasers, it should be reiterated. The city then went back to Representative Schreier's office to ensure that this was an okay change, that money was granted, would this be an okay change to how we spend the money, and that was approved. And now actually Representative Schreier's website reflects that change as well. So just a quick reminder on tasers, why the city is requesting money for tasers, why this was a really important financial request through this appropriations grant. So as it was presented by Sergeant Asbell, someone much more an expert in tasers than I, in consultation with the mayor earlier this year, they emphasized that taser replacement was essential at this point. We have a number of tasers that are getting very close to or slightly past their useful life. which reduces safety for both the community and our officers. New tasers, as we learned about on May 11th, provide added safety for our community and our officers through updated ways of both signaling that the device is being used and making sure that it's done successfully and accurately. Also, and what I thought was most exciting as a civilian and novice, is that these new tasers would have connectivity to our body-worn camera system, ensuring that anytime a taser is taken out of its holster, it activates not just the body camera of the officer with the taser, but the body camera of any officers within the vicinity of the scene. And I think it's notable that I'd like to talk a bit about the trade-offs with the ALPR technology and choosing not to pursue that as part of this grant process. Many members of the community, some who are here tonight, some who are just here, and some who are standing, have shared very clearly their concerns about the use of ALPR and of flock safety systems in particular. While the original proposal included 12 flock safety cameras, this proposal evolved for valid reasons, not just the concerns that were named, but also the data security and the appropriate use of the tool. As shared on May 11th, researcher Phil Neff shared research that these systems were being accessed by federal officers, both through directly and indirectly, and the lack of security around how the data is used and stored brought up a lot of questions about the technology as it currently exists. And as also shared at that same meeting, ALPR can still be an invaluable tool for investigative purposes. However, no matter the trade-offs, no matter where you personally fall on the spectrum of ardent support for ALPR or a full ban, we can all, I think, agree that there's a need for a clear policy that regulates ALPR use in line with Issaquah's community values before we move forward in adopting any technology. And so that's why it came out of the proposed use of the grant dollars. So the proposal tonight is to approve the acceptance of the 2026 Community Appropriations Grant for the purchase of new tasers and the replacement of interview room camera equipment. Specifically, the administration is recommending that the City Council pass a resolution further outlining the terms of this grant acceptance to include the following: that the money will only be spent on tasers and interview room camera equipment, that acknowledges the termination of the city's memorandum of understanding with flock safety, and that requires an ALPR reader policy be developed, publicly considered, and adopted by ordinance by City Council before any future city action is taken on this technology. A bit about why this is the administration's proposal. So we're here, June 1. I don't have quite as lovely as a highlight as John did in his, but June 1 today. There are two kind of significant deadlines that the administration is working within right now. One is the June 30th deadline where our current quote from Axon expires and we would need to ask for another quote. And the other is the September 30th expiration of the funds themselves, that by which date we would need to accept those funds or we do not get them, they go away. It's not as easy as just saying yes. There is some administrative work that will need to happen to prepare to receive the funds. And we know that, I believe, a conversation about automated license plate reader cameras may take longer than a single meeting. And with this in mind, we want to make sure that we can act on accepting the money for the tasers as quickly as possible, and then turn our focus to making sure we have strong, meaningful policy that regulates the technology. So you can see on here, the plan is to come back to council on July 20th to be able to start that conversation together as a group. The options tonight are threefold. They, of course, have some nuance within them, but pass, delay, or do not pass. The administration is recommending that we pass the resolution, that you pass the resolution this evening. You may, of course, choose to delay, but delaying risks the taser quote lapsing, the costs increasing, or missing the window to accept those grant funds. And not passing, well, I don't think this has been talked about a ton. The tasers are going to be in need of replacement. This is about, $500,000 that we have to accept to spend on essential equipment. And if we were to choose not to accept the grant award, we would need to find a new way. The word budget has been mentioned many times tonight, a new way to fund this essential purchase that would potentially take money out of other commitments, whether it be for police facilities or it be the general fund at large. So while that might not happen tomorrow, it will absolutely be the case over the course of the upcoming years that this equipment will need to be replaced. So again, the recommendation tonight from the administration is to approve the resolution, accepting the grant funds and outlining how the grant funding will and will not be spent, and timing and next steps. Following tonight's meeting, if the resolution is passed, the administration will take the necessary administrative steps to accept the grant award and purchase the tasers, and also work to return to the council when the tasers are purchased. Given the purchase amount, the dollar amount is above $300,000, would come back, so you would know when those are purchased. And then on the bottom half of this timeline, you can see the work around automated license plate reader cameras that will come back to the council. Currently working on some draft policy matrix, but we'll come back to the council on July 20th to talk more about that. And that is where I'll pause.
All right. Any questions for Dale? Looking. There you go, Jail. That is the ultimate sign of success. You got in front. Okay, so not seeing any questions. Is there a motion? Council President Martz.
I move to approve resolution number 2026-13, authorizing the acceptance of $452,477 in grant funding from the fiscal year 26 discretionary community funding program for the purchase of tasers and interview room equipment for the Issaquah Police Department, and restricting any city action related to automated license plate reader technology until after a policy has been adopted by the Issaquah City Council, and authorize the inclusion of $452,477 in revenues and related expenditures in a subsequent 2025-2026 budget amendment if needed.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any council discussion? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Dale. Great presentation. I think my concern coming out at this point was we had talked about this quite a lot and there was a lot of information out there. You did a really good job of explaining to the community that their message was heard loud and clear, and that not only was that said in words, but it was also said in the motion and the way that the presentation was made to show that, okay, not only are we doing this with the congressional grant acceptance, but here's the exact pathway that we are taking. So thank you very much for that clarity to the community. Thank you very much for showing up. Your voices have been loud and clear and heard, and will be continued to be heard as we go through the process of adopting that technology. But this is a check mark for good community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Nichols, you're in the halfway point. I can't quite tell. Okay, that was okay. Go.
Thank you. Didn't I? Yeah. Thank you. I want to second everything that Councilmember Walsh has stated. Again, thank you to Dale. Lots of good conversations on this topic over the past several months, I think. And I know you put a ton of time into this, a lot of work, and you've had to come up to speed on a lot of new topics as well. Also, thank you to the community for coming out and sharing your opinions with us very, very clearly. Those opinions were heard, and you can see the results of those opinions being reflected in what you're being presented with tonight. So I'll just be brief and say that I support the resolution, and I'm comfortable that it satisfies the community concerns that have come up. I think this is a good path forward. Will give us a chance to set some very clear guidelines as ordinances, and that we will have more opportunity for everyone to take a look at those. There will be plenty of time to review them, and feedback will, again, be very helpful in that process, and I appreciate that y'all will come out for that as well. So again, thanks everybody for the good work and all the time that went into this.
All right, Councilmember Adair.
Yeah, echoing the same thing, I fully support this resolution as well as how you presented it and really made it very clear to both us, the audience, everyone on how we got to here, what's been done, and addressing all their concerns. And the only thing I'm just going to really add is just further encouragement to the community to reach out to us, to talk to others about what you want this ordinance to look like. I personally have a lot of questions in how to shape this and how we address these technology concerns while helping public safety and what that looks like. And I'm not positive what it looks like yet, and so I encourage the community to continue to reach out to us, but also to the rest of the community so that everyone can give us that feedback so that we can draft something that really reflects what our community needs. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Council President Martz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First and foremost, I want to thank the public. You know, we are not done with the subject of ALPRs. This is, to quote my favorite politician, this is not the end. This is not the beginning of the end, but this is perhaps the end of the beginning. That's Winston Churchill. But the public has been both consistently passionate and extremely focused in its feedback. I mean, I am always sensitive to what the community hears and what our city employees hear, and what I've heard is a real respect for the IPD, but a real concern about this technology. And I think that fundamental point is extremely important for everyone to understand. I want to thank my fellow council members on this issue. You know, later on a different issue, you're going to hear me say that, you know, talk about the 3 biggest issues that we've had as a city in the 17 years that I've been on. I consider this one of the 3. And the fact that ostensibly 4 of our council members are relatively new to the council is really quite extraordinary to have such a major issue come up with so many essentially new council members and yet still be able to find the important conversations with the administration. Again, we're not done with this topic tonight, but we're taking a major step forward in both addressing community concern and council concern. So I want to thank my fellow council members for this important discussion, and of course I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you. Echoing all the thanks for the detailed, incredible work that staff has done, and to the community, thank you so much for your feedback. And again, I will echo Councilmember Adair of help your feedback will help build what ultimately our guardrails will be on any future technology. And I've often, for me, sometimes it's easier to, you know, definitively say what we don't want. I think the community has definitively said what they do not want. And then sometimes the more difficult work is deciding what we do want. And so I look forward to our future policy conversation on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dale, congrats. You've been a rock star through this whole process. And if we gave out gold stars, you would get a gold star. Maybe we should start giving out gold stars, Wally. Okay, there's no further discussion. The motion for the council is to approve resolution number 2026-13, authorizing the acceptance of $452,477 in grant funding from the fiscal year 26 discretionary community funding program for the purchase of tasers and interview room equipment for the Issaquah Police Department, and restricting any city action related to automated license plate reader technology until after a policy has been approved by the Issaquah City Council, and authorize the inclusion of $452,477 in revenues and related expenditures in a subsequent 2026 budget amendment. If needed, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. And that passes unanimously. The next item of business is ID 2037, Eastside Fire and Rescue Long-Term Governance and Financing Options, and our city administrator is going to give us a briefing.
I was just concerned about our facility staff waiting through this for the next position, but they said they're okay. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. We've placed on the agenda this evening at the request of Mayor Mullet and the council leadership a discussion regarding Eastside Fire and Rescue future organization and finance issues. Chief Aho, thank you for coming this evening. I think he did a nice job of kind of setting context to this. Councilmember Walsh has shared updates with the EFR board's discussions over the last a couple of months, but it was the feeling of Mayor Mullet and council leadership that perhaps this was an opportune time for the council to have a larger discussion about where we are at this point, what the council feels it needs to instruct its representatives on the EFR board as these discussions move forward. So that really is the presentation, Mr. Mayor. We're certainly happy to answer any questions. Kristen was on the call. She's no longer, but we'll be happy to answer any questions. But certainly I think between yourself, Council President Martz, you could lead the discussion from the talks that were had last week.
Council President Martz, or I think that Eastside Fire and Rescue Board is obviously going to make a fairly large decision to decide, kind of as we heard, I think from Chief Aho during the public comments, in terms of the three options going forward. And I think at the council leadership meeting last week on Wednesday, I think it was discussed that, well, as Council President Martz just said, like 4 of our council members are fairly new in this process. And I think the kind of discussion was to maybe discuss if the council is ready to have an opinion on those three options already, or if the council would like to kind of request to get more information from Eastside Fire and Rescue at a committee of the whole meeting, so they can understand kind of what the different permutations and options look like and what the impacts are to the community. And I think that's what prompted this discussion. And I see Councilmember Walsh, who is our rep on Eastside Fire and Rescue. Councilmember Walsh.
Thanks. I just wanted to start with kind of a clarification on what the June meeting is, but also I'm just very excited and passionate about this, and so I'm sorry if some of my lengthy updates have given the impression that things are moving really quickly or that we're hitting a point of no return. The EFR board has really tried to take a very intentional path in having this conversation. As some of you who were on council last budget cycle know, we've had some really difficult budget seasons, and seeing those costs increase has been really difficult. Eastside Fire and Rescue really was established as an innovation in bringing together, regional governance for a fire service. But we did so before the state had any kind of revenue levers. And so what we got was this really great cost savings from shared services, and we end up with, more services than we could necessarily do with an individual fire service. That's why we've seen so many cities and fire districts move toward this Eastside Fire and Rescue model. But what we didn't get was any additional revenue levers. And so when the state developed this idea of regional fire authorities, we saw a lot of communities and fire districts adopting this. But what Eastside Fire and Rescue tried to do was this very intentional path of saying, okay, what's our problem statement? That's around these budget issues. And that's a similar, and then reviewing all of our limited options. So I'll put it out there. There's basically 3 options. Stay the course and continue having all of the cities and fire districts fund via just their revenue model. The second one is consolidate into a fire district. That gives us additional revenue options, but we lose a lot of governance because none of us can represent on that board. It just becomes an elected fire district board. And then the third is explore a regional fire authority. That can give us some of the governance options as well as the additional financing levers. There's a few other pieces and, tweaks in there, but those are the 3 main ideas. So we were reviewing those limited options and then discussing the pros and cons of each of them from 3 different perspectives. The residents, what do they get if we make a change? The jurisdictions, the cities and the fire districts, and also Eastside Fire and Rescue. So I wanted to start with why you've been hearing a lot about that is because Eastside Fire and Rescue Board has been going through that conversation and educating ourselves so that we can make an educated movement forward. That being said, the decision point for EFR on June 11th is a vote merely to approve that the chief begin education of our member jurisdictions, which is the city and fire districts. There is no vote saying regional fire authority is it, all of that. That decision is the cities and the fire districts. But we wanted to ensure that the board's questions were answered and we could kind of agree on a general direction before asking the chief to go into all of those discussions, which we're proposing would happen from July to October. So I guess I want to clarify that the decision point is direction and education, but our direction to the chief is going to be that each of the cities and fire districts should go through the full pros and cons of all of these options along with the board's recommendation, because it would be too difficult to, it wouldn't be true to just give one recommendation and not have that full conversation out there. And Issaquah maintains the decision authority on whether to join a planning committee to create a fire district or a regional fire authority. Once something like that is created, it's about 18 months of detailed work on what are all of the levers, what are all of the pieces, and then everything would go in front of voters if we went down that path. So happy to answer any questions. I'm sure the chief can answer a lot of questions, but I just wanted to clarify, there are no decisions in June at the Eastside Fire and Rescue that tie Issaquah's hands. It's just whether or not we feel that we're ready from an Eastside Fire and Rescue perspective for the chief to go out and start the conversation with each of the cities.
Okay, before I call on Council President Martz, but I mean, if I'm looking at Chief Aho correctly from his public comments, I thought there was, at the June 11th meeting, going to be a request to pick one of those three options as a initial study path. Is that correct? Or?
My direction to the chief as vice chair was that we, as a board from EFR, make a recommendation of a path and use that and present all of the options to each of the cities, because there is no locking in on anything, because each of the cities would have to choose to join a planning committee.
Okay, and I'll turn to Council President Martz. I think at leadership, the discussion was, it seemed like the order was kind of flip-flopped. It seemed like it would be like, let's have the discussion with the council of how the options look so the council could kind of weigh in. But go ahead, Council President Martz.
So I'm a former member of Eastside Fire and Rescue Board. I think there's a lot of questions. I don't know, I don't really understand the timing all that well right at the moment. I guess I'm a visual person. I like presentations. At the heart of it, and I'm not arguing one way or the other, I'm just enunciating the questions, I guess, that I have. At the heart of it, it's a decision about continuing to carry this cost ourselves or to potentially move to an option where somebody else carries those costs, right? With legislated options that are different than us carrying those costs. One of the things that I haven't seen, I've heard whispers, people who are for say one thing, people who are against say another thing. I would really love to see comps. I would really love to see what the actual costs of fire districts are for residents, what the actual costs of RFAs are for residents versus the costs that we have. Because my understanding is, and somebody can tell me if I'm wrong, but we actually, Eastside Fire and Rescue does a pretty amazing job with the money that it has. And we pay, although costs have been going up, we pay a very reasonable amount of money, still a huge number, but for our residents, if you ask our residents, how much do you spend for your $500,000 house or whatever, that we do very well with Eastside Fire and Rescue. So that's part of what I would want to understand before going much further. And then I am honestly still confused about options and timing. We're part of a large group. Eastside Fire and Rescue incorporates 3 cities and several fire districts, and contract cities, and I tell you today, I don't really understand how this, there's game theory on this whole thing, right? And I don't really understand how the game theory works out when there's so many different organizations, some of whom are not in as, and I hate to use the word rosy because Wally will probably blanch because I'm sure our finances aren't really rosy, but our finances are rosy compared to some of the other partners in Eastside Fire and Rescue. And that gets into some of the conversations. So these are all questions that I have. And again, I'm not saying we should do one thing or the other, but there are a bunch of question marks that I have today, tonight, and wondering how we proceed as a city to get those question marks answered, because I do worry that if we go down, if Eastside as an organization goes down a certain path, our options will be limited after that decision is made. Thank you.
Councilmember Boyd.
I think it would be helpful for me to get some clarity when we talk about education. I guess you can tell me if what I'm picturing is correct or not of if the board effectively gives their preferred path, and then that means that the chief or representatives of the chief go to the different member jurisdictions, cities, and the education portion is them saying this was the EFR board's preferred path. Here are the other paths, and just, okay, sorry if I'm just repeating back to you what you said, but okay, if that accurately captures it, that's helping me understand a little better. Thank you.
And I think tonight's discussion is decide if this council is ready to pick one of those three preferred paths tonight, because there's not another council meeting between now and June 11th. So that decision would have to be made, because Issaquah, as a member of EFR at this point, is expected to take a position on which three of those paths to pick. And I think that's the reason we're having this conversation. Councilmember Nichols.
It seems like there's a good amount of confusion just around the timing of different events and when. So so there's confusion around what the events are, what the timing of those events are, and what the implications of those events are, and further, which of those decisions that are coming up are one-way doors or not. That would probably be a good presentation. We have a June 8th cow. I appreciate that's not a scheduled meeting, but that seems like it might be a good time to, if that can be put together briefly as a overview of, just lay out a calendar. Here's the decisions that will come. Here's the ones that we really can't walk back from by statutes. Here's the ones that, even though we could walk back from them, they will put us on a path that may be harder to walk back from. And here's the ones that really are not real decisions at all, they're more informational. I think that's the bit of information that we're lacking at the moment. I don't think there's any way we can make a decision tonight. I don't see how that would be possible. But that seems like the biggest missing piece that would be good to get out as soon as possible, essentially.
Councilmember Adair.
As the other member on Eastside Fire, the only thing I'll add to this in terms of my perspective on it and the perspective on this decision, I've had discussions with some members here, and I've also, this has been one of the things on my mind a lot, because I think this is a very big, consequential decision, and it has a ton of complexity to it. So I fully understand people's confusions, people's questions on this, because every option has so many different pros and cons and things to it. So how I've viewed this June meeting discussion has not been this is a point of no return, this is a key decision point, other than the board having been presented all the options. Is there an option that is not just stay the course that we should add and get more information on? Because one of the options as mentioned is just stay the course, leave everything as is. And so if the board were to decide that, then everything would stay, nothing would change. And more that the board's discussion is about, is any of these other options worth pursuing? And if so, we're saying, let's pursue one of these options as a possibility to do, because so many of the questions to this, what it's going to cost our residents, what it's going to be, actually can't even fully be known yet until even the planning committee. So it's more, is this something that Eastside Fire should look into, and then again start presenting to the city, start seeing what the city involvement is. And so that's how I have perceived this decision to be made next week, is that are any of these choices worth worth, continuing down the path, but I do not see it as any kind of, definitive gate that, requires anything that is not unable to be backed out of. It's really just like, should we proceed? Should we look into something that is not stay the course? And so that's how I have kind of perceived this decision coming up. If that helps clarify anything for anybody else.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. When I first came on council in 1999, I didn't request Eastside Fire and Rescue as a committee, but I was placed on Eastside Fire and Rescue as a committee. And they were going through the initial growing pains of a new organization, and it was refreshing and invigorating to see a new organization get its legs under it and to flourish along the way. But at that time, there was, and there always has been, discussion of how to fund the organization, how to properly make sure that all the members were paying their fair share, et cetera. This is one avenue, a regional fire authority, that needs to be explored, and it was recently put into place by the legislature. I think we deserve to have it explored, but we also need to keep in mind that we probably need more information. This last month, we devoted $800,000 in our budget to Eastside Fire and Rescue, which amounts to about 13% of the monthly expenditures. So it's a fairly big chunk, and we need to make sure that we understand all the options before we give our representatives guidance on how we want to go forward. So I would be in favor of bringing it to a CAL when we have the appropriate scheduling so that we can get some of those questions answered. I would encourage leadership to reach out to each of us to give us an additional cheat sheet, if you will, and then we can ask our questions from there and try to have a good basis of the issues that we think are at the heart of things for us right now that can be discussed at that CAL whenever it does get scheduled. Thank you.
Can I ask Chief Aho, would you be able to answer a question? If you, I guess on Councilmember Joe's, is there a time sensitivity to making this initial decision on June 11th, or is that date have flexibility to it, or what's their, I guess, what's the sense, like if the council were to request to have more information,
Sure.
Is it like, well, we can't wait because we have to go forward on June 11th for X, Y, and Z, or what's that look like, I guess, from EFER's perspective?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Excuse me. Yeah, June 11th is not a drop-dead date on that. That was one that we had decided upon only because we've been talking about this since March as we go through the educational process. There is 2 partners that are within Eastside Fire and Rescue that have already made a decision and they're moving forward.
Is that 38 in North Bend?
Yeah. And so, in fact, tomorrow night, the City of North Bend is going to appoint their 3 planning committee members. So some of it was to try to get in alignment for the overall conversation, so there isn't a couple partners that are getting either too far out ahead of the rest of EFER overall, so we can try to coordinate this as a concerted effort and maintain Eastside Fire as the original founders were deciding those. We do have some partners, as Councilmember Walsh identified, do have some financial concerns where they are within 2 years that they have to make some decisions. Being this an 18 months to 2-year process, the clock is ticking. As far as Eastside Fire, the existing ILA will expire in 31. So trying to coordinate something with 5 partners, plus the potential of incorporating some of the contract agencies, if they so choose, ahead of the expiration of that ILA can be a lengthy process. Not only, as we talked about here, is educating all of our elected bodies, but also the education that the community is going to need to understand what the direction is from our governing bodies. So, yeah. Sorry, long-winded.
No, that's, so, and then is there an example, like if 38 in North Bend formed an RFA?
Yes, sir.
Is there any examples of I mean, Eastside Fire and Rescue is such a unique model. I think it was kind of ahead of its time, or still is a unique model, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's really no examples of RFAs partnering with like an EFR because EFR is really one of a kind, right? Is that fair? So there's really.
Yeah, there's no other fire departments, districts in Washington State that are structured the way Eastside is.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it's a unicorn from that standpoint.
Yeah. Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, two statements on this. First of all, I've talked with the chief. If North Bend and D38 do form an RFA, they can continue to be a part of Eastside Fire and Rescue, even if the other jurisdictions do not. That would just, much like we have fire districts that have a different funding model and a fire benefit charge, they could do so, and that would be just their payment. So we've asked that question, but one of the reasons we are moving on this timeline is because D38 won't have money in 2 years. And what does that mean for Eastside Fire and Rescue as an organization? Can we keep the band together? Can we keep everything moving? And then if D38 and North Bend are setting up their own RFA planning committee, you know, I know that we could join in at a later date, but I do get worried about another organization starting to make decisions and going down a path that we then have to push into if we decide that's the right move for us. So I think toward what Councilmember Adair said about the idea of why is the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board making a decision and a recommendation at this point is just, if we recommend to continue funding as is, there is no action for the chief to take to educate all of the cities and fire districts. If we do recommend a path forward, then the goal is to do all of the education on what are the pros and cons of each of these and why the EFR board recommended a certain path. But then any organizations can or can't join in or continue paying with the current model that we have. It just would be, it would continue to take up a very large portion of our budget if we continue on with this same model.
So I guess, Chief Aho, it seems like the decision on June 11th, you're saying isn't like, it's not like a drop dead date, but so I guess this would maybe be an offline conversation, is just to figure out like, is there time for a committee of the whole discussion to go through some of the permutations or not? And that just becomes a question of what date makes the most sense for that, I guess. But Council President Martz.
Yeah, I just want to plus one Councilmember Nichols' suggestion of bringing it to a cow, whether it's on the 8th, which I will unfortunately not be able to attend, or a different date, coming back with some of the information, in particular the comps. I hear Councilmember Adair, some of the financials aren't particularly understood, but we can see, right, granted, EFR is a unicorn, okay, how do we compare to fire districts? How do we compare to RFAs that are out there, right? I have heard a lot of opinions about RFAs, but as you and I know, the Bucks, you know, the Bucks really tell a story all their own. So that plus other supplemental information, you know, I mean, I hear there's still this question about game theory, right? And there's organizations that are already moving forward, and that's already going to circumscribe, that's already changing the landscape, but I would like to understand the landscape better at that cow whenever it occurs. Thank you.
Councilmember Adair.
I think my question is kind of in terms of the clarity of this discussion we're having here are we trying to get to either an answer on how we're supposed to vote on the 11th, or trying to see if Eastside Fire can not have the decision on that date? And is that what we're trying to get to today? And that's what I'm trying to kind of clarify in terms of where we're going in today's discussion, is what we're trying to say here. And if we are saying we need to move that date, is that possible? Because like, it's not just our voice that's at that meeting. So yeah, what that looks like.
Deputy President Jang.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to reiterate what I think has been said before, which is that this is, no matter how you slice it, fire is a very big portion of our city budget, second possibly only to police in terms of our general. So any decision that we make, I do think it is very important that our whole council is very clear-eyed and knowledgeable about all the different aspects of it, including, the funding models, what a fire benefit charge is. I mean, I have no idea, so I'm very much looking forward to being educated on this. I think, I do think it's important for us to, as a council, learn about all those different things before we make a decision one way or the other. If the decision that's being made on the 11th really is just, oh, this is, giving the chief approval to go to the councils and educate them about all the different options, I think that's fine. But I also think it might be a bit premature to say, oh, here are the options that we think are the best ways forward. I think we do need a full, exploration of what all the different options are before we can say, oh yeah, this is, the one that we want to recommend, unless, there's something where it's too much staff time to go into all three of those options in detail and you really can only choose one. So I guess my question to you, Chief Aho, would be, is it realistic to, give the full council an overview of what all the different options are and what the potential, financial, et cetera, implications would be?
Yeah, I already have the PowerPoint built. We just went through it at the last EFR board meeting. And to answer some of your question, I've already gone out and started educating some of our contract agencies. In fact, I've got another presentation to do tomorrow night, which is walking the commission through. To Councilmember Walsh's comment earlier, we didn't want to waste your time if EFR board says, no, we're happy with how it is. So then that puts a pin in it right there. It may seem a little bit out of sequence on there, but we're just trying to respect all of your time.
Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Chief. If I could ask, as the, newest, alternate member of the board who hasn't actually had a meeting yet, could you talk a little bit about the intersections of this, I'm hearing slower decision point with the EFR zone, budgeting process cycle, et cetera?
Yeah, those are running two independent timelines. We still have to develop a 27-28 budget process. Our first meeting on that is June 9th with the subcommittee on that. So the RFA conversation or the future consideration conversation, that's going to take a lot longer through the budget process to come up with a final determination. Ideally, we don't have to go through another budget process like this. But that is a decision for you all to make.
Councilmember Walsh.
Okay, so reiterating what Councilmember Adair said, what is the direction for the EFR reps for this next meeting? And maybe talking to the administration, is it possible to put something in on the June 8th Committee of the Whole meeting? I will say the EFR board, it's taken us, I don't know, probably 3 or so hours of education on this to get to the point where we understand the financials, the governance model, what the options are, all of those things. So I think that would be a lot to put this council through on such a quick time frame, but
I mean, I think Councilmember Walsh, you just hit kind of the nail on the head. I think that's why people are saying, is the June 11th date absolutely necessary? Because as I think you just accurately 100% described, there's 2 members of this council who sit on the EFR board. The presentations have been very lengthy and complicated. And I think the conversation of leadership was, can we have one committee of the whole discussion to kind of have a deeper dive so the entire council kind of gets a little more cut up to speed before there's a, just trying to, I think I understand your sequencing question. I think at this point, I think it's fair to say the education is not going to be a waste of time. I think it's going to be valuable. So I think the council, every member of the council feels like they have enough information to say, yes, this makes sense. And I think that would just be the hope. But I think the question is, as you say, we're just one member of that board. And so I don't know if that date can be adjusted to, because I agree with Councilmember Walsh doing that same, and Council President Martz isn't here on the 8th, so it would kind of be the committee of the whole, which would be July 13th, I think, correct? City Administrator would be the next one after June 8th. And so it's just it's not like a timeline, given the big scheme of what we're talking about a month difference or so, but I think there would, I don't know, that's the question for this council, I think is the request to have the committee of the whole discussion so the council can kind of figure out like how they would want their EFA reps to vote during that vote when it does occur, of which of those three options is the best one to kind of go down.
So the other part of the question is, does the city council feel like this is one of those doors that you can't go back through? I think we've tried to clarify that at this point, the goal of EFR making a recommendation and sending the chief or a representative out to each of the jurisdictions is like, let's educate, but there is no decision, there isn't anything that locks us as a city in to any changes. We could continue paying via our current model, even if every other organization within EFR goes a different pathway. So I'm not sure what the city councils need to have the information before that vote, whether that makes sense to me.
Councilmember Adair.
Yeah, again, I'll kind of clarify like how I'm saying my perspective and position on this has been almost like that the EFR board has been a SSP committee, has been a subcommittee going through, digging in all the details and then saying, okay, here's what we think, and now we're going to pass it up to council, is how I've kind of seen this decision as about digging all the details, seeing what's there, and now we're going to pass it to the cities to actually look at this and see what each city sees. And I feel that once this decision made was in June, I was kind of, my perspective has been that it was going to involve probably quite a few months of discussions and education throughout this council on these different decisions. And so, you know, I'm not positive that even pushing this decision a month is going to be enough time to educate this council to the extent that I think you want to be educated in terms of making a decision. Because for me, like saying, I've seen this decision is not, this isn't, we're making an RFA, let's do this. This is, okay, this seems worthwhile to get more information on, and now let's send it to all the jurisdictions to now see what each individual jurisdiction thinks about it and if they support it or not, because then if they don't, again, then that kills it there as well. So that's been my perspective of this decision and how I'm treating it in terms of what my thought process.
Deputy President Chang.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if, you know, the decision on June 11th is just, okay, is this something that's worth forming the city councils about? And I think the answer is yes. And then I think, I mean, based on, you know, the conversations that I've had with you, Councilmember Adair, of like what the steps in the process are, I think there's a step in the process which is like, we would have to create a 27-member board with like 3 representatives from every jurisdiction to actually explore the creation of a regional fire authority. And I think that would be a path where it's like, then you're really committing to do it. So I don't think we're at that point yet, and I do think it's worth it for us to all become educated about the issue. And if the vote on the 11th is, should we become more educated about RFAs, then I would personally, you know, be supportive of that.
But just to clarify, Deputy President, you're saying that's different than saying this is our preferred route. You're saying a vote to educate is a slightly different kind of board decision on the 11th.
Yeah, I think if the vote is a vote to educate, then I'm in favor of that. And if it's a vote to educate about RFA specifically, or a vote to educate about all the options, I would be in favor of a vote to educate us about all the different options.
Council President Martz.
So I guess I'll just name my concern. If we were to get back information that said that every single RFA jams the meter on price, right, then I would not be in favor of considering going down that path, because we are a city that can afford to fund a fire department if the alternative to our city was a 50% increase in the cost of fire, even if it took it off of our shoulders, right, and put it on an independent agency. So this is my concern and why I would like the information in the form of a cow before this body makes a decision. I have heard through the grapevine that RFAs jam the needle on cost. If that's not true, great, then it's worth considering. But if it is true, then I think it would be a bad decision for us to go down that path. So that's why I want supplemental information. I didn't want to go into it tonight because I didn't want to argue about for or against RFAs, but that's the kind of stuff that real data washes away rumor and innuendo.
Okay. City Administrator, I'm not sure. We've had a good discussion. I think leadership will be meeting again on Wednesday morning, and we can kind of.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think the last point that Councilmember Jang made is a very interesting one and maybe worth a little bit further discussion, because I think, and please correct me, Deputy Council President, if I'm misstating this, is that there's no preference in what you said, that if the board, if the EFR board says, let's educate on these items versus saying, here is a preferred model to educate, I think that's a significant difference. And if the council this evening is comfortable with that, perhaps that's sufficient to ask your representatives to make that distinction. I also want to go back to the council president's point about our partners. Some of our partners are not in rosy financial conditions, and I think the circumstances that they're facing and this question are different than this council's. And so if our representatives are able to share the concern of the council that says education is great, but preference is not something that the Issaquah City Council is comfortable with at this point, maybe that's the right context of a discussion on June the 11th. See what happens, have your representatives report back, and then decide next steps. But I think that distinction is a very key distinction that the Deputy Council President made, and I would ask Mr. Mayor, maybe the council could take a moment to talk further about that.
I mean, I would agree that the Deputy President Jang's suggestion does seem to be the best, because I've heard unanimous agreement from all 7. Well, I think Councilmember Walsh is very up to speed already, being the primary rep, but I think that the other, 5 of the 7 would definitely, are all saying very clearly, we would love to learn more and get educated more. So I think Deputy President Jang probably did have the best suggestion so far of a possibility of just framing it as we definitely want to be educated more. Councilmember Nichols? Or Walsh?
Yeah, I guess what I was going to say off of that is, with my EFR hat on, EFR vice chair hat on, the request from the board there was to make a recommendation there. So I think that is going to be the motion on the table. With my Issaquah City Council hat on, I can go to that meeting and make a request or an alternate motion that asks us merely to say, do we think the current model doesn't work and the others should be educated on, or the jurisdiction should be educated on options and things like that. So I'm comfortable with that. I just don't know if that's going to be something that passes the board.
And I don't think it's so much the current model doesn't work. I just think the current model could be working, and there's still a benefit to getting educated on other options. So I think I've heard consensus from this council tonight. Everyone's in favor of getting more education of what the options look like in the fire space. So it's not, I think, saying the current, I don't think you even have to say that. I think it's just like the motion from Issaquah's perspective would just be, we're in favor of getting more education of what the options look like in the fire space. Councilmember Nichols?
Yeah, going a bit off of what Councilwoman Walsh said, I appreciate the idea from Deputy Council President to try to make this into more of an informational ask from the board, but we're not in control. So we can make that ask, but the board can still decide to take a different path than we would like. it's a large multi-agency board. So it still could be useful for us to try to schedule some time, assuming it's possible, I don't know if it is, ahead of that, simply to arm our representatives with the best possible set of opinion, of our best consensus at that time, even if it's not a fully informed consensus. It could be better informed than it is at the moment.
Councilmember Boyd.
I feel like I'm maybe not fully appreciating the board decision point, which is not any kind of point of no return, that says this is our preferred alternative. I guess is a hybrid of the education piece being, here are the three different options, status quo, stay the course, et cetera. Of the three, this is the board's preferred option, but an equal amount of time is spent on all the other options, and maybe there's some context given to the discussion of the board discussion. We as a city can still decide, hey, thanks board for that feedback, and the three of us that would have weighed in on that, it's a bit weird getting on the timeline there for me, but I don't know, I guess I'm not having any particular worry about we can still decide what our thoughts are on the decision we have to make, whatever the board's preferred alternative is.
Council, I didn't see who went first. Walsh or Councilmember Walsh, go ahead.
Toward Councilmember Nichols' point, I can certainly share around the presentation that Chief Aho has made to the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board, which does include many of the back-of-the-napkin things about, the finances of these two options and what the governance model is. I would be happy to give a quick, PowerPoint or email about here's the pros and cons of each of the three as discussed by the board. And I would be happy to make some good of the order comments and further discussion on the June 8th meeting after I've sent that information out, because I do think Councilmember Nichols' point of I can advocate for one way based on this conversation, but it isn't at all definitive that I can change what the motion is and what comes out of that board recommendation.
Council President Martz.
So I have perhaps a question for Chief Aho, and it comes back to this whole game theory thing, right? So let's just say we get to the 11th, and everybody else says, go, and Issaquah says, we don't know. Like, we have lots of questions still. How does that change the landscape? Because the possibility of Issaquah going it alone or forming its own fire authority with whoever, we have the headquarters, we have a bunch of fire stations, we're at the heart of the district. Does it fundamentally change? And our partners, some of our partners may be watching this very this very meeting this evening, wondering how Issaquah is going and hearing that Issaquah has a bunch of questions. Does it change the conversation that occurs at EFR?
Yeah, anybody that looks at pausing a decision to slow up a direction for Eastside, it can have a slowing effect of what does sustainability look like for the organization. That doesn't preclude anybody from going not a pathway on their own. That's probably not a good way to craft that. It doesn't. EFR will still remain in existence, even though using 38 North Bend, going out for an RFA. Each individual partner has a decision to make as far as the timing should something be worthy of changing. So Eastside, as it's currently crafted, can still remain. Now, we do still have that 2031 deadline that we would have to address for the ILA piece on there. So, and what we've talked about with EFR leadership is like, okay, we get to June, now our work begins. We've done the easy part. We've educated the EFR board. Now we need to go out and educate each of our partners. And we need to invest that time into the partners. So, and relying on each of the representatives that are put forward to help to provide education to each of the individual councils and commissions moving forward. So we've talked about, is there a point of no return? The point of no return is when you put it to ballot, whatever the decision is, or don't put it to ballot. That's your point of no return. Even if we get into the planning phase of, hypothetically say, we all decide that we're going to go down an RFA, we get in the planning phase, you can opt out at any point during that time.
And my question is a little bit different.
Okay.
It's what if everybody else is on board? Yes, RFA, go for it, except Issaquah. And Issaquah says, we don't know. We need more information. We're not sure. You can't have our vote tonight.
Yeah.
I know you want our vote, but you can't have it because we're all concerned and confused, right? What does that do to the go-forward plan if one of the cities that is one of the biggest contributors, both in terms of material and dollars, to the current organization is only a maybe or a question mark on the RFA?
Question.
I think it was directed at Chief. I mean.
Yeah, it doesn't preclude progress moving forward for the overall decisions. So it is if the majority of the folks say we need to continue towards a pathway, then we can continue towards a pathway. If Issaquah needs more information, then I just need to understand what information you need to help inform you so you can be comfortable with the journey, or make a decision to not. That is still council's decision, so it doesn't stop.
Thank you.
Councilman Walsh.
From a practical standpoint, if I can't convince the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board to go with an alternative motion, us abstaining or voting no, I believe is 2 out of 7 votes. Is that correct? 2 out of 8. So if everybody else votes to move forward with having a recommendation, I believe the next step would be all of the cities and districts get educated. So it would be no different. Just from a practical standpoint, if I understand the way the voting would work.
My concern isn't whether we can prevail on the 11th. My concern is that if the economics change, I mean, if I were one of our fellow cities, I'm not going to presume to say which one, but you know, I suspect the economics look different if everybody goes in on it versus if there's a suspicion that down the road Issaquah might want to do something else because it can afford to. This comes back to this game theory thing, right? And would the RFA look different to those other entities, knowing that Issaquah is only a maybe, and that maybe we do in the end, maybe we don't in the end, as opposed to being go, go, go.
I actually can answer that one. So now that I understand the question a little bit better, yes. If Issaquah says no, then, or not now, it does change the economic landscape for everybody else. Because it's assessed valuation, it's resource needs and service level associated with that. If we're trying to do something collectively together, there still is ways to craft it so we can do it collectively together and underneath the existing EFR model. But the funding side of it is going to look different.
Thank you. I mean, there's a lot of weird permutations out there, right? We could become a contract city to a new RFA, right? I mean, the permutations get weird very quickly. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
City Administrator.
Fascinating discussion. Thank you all for taking the time. I think there is one thing that Issaquah can bring to the table that will make our partners pay attention, and that's the issue of scrutiny. that if Issaquah says, yes, we want to go down this path, we would prefer there not be a preferred path, but understand, partners, that we are going to scrutinize this. In our community, we have an expectation of transparency. We have an expectation of sharing full information. And so you all can do whatever you think makes sense in your community, but understand that we're going to set a very high bar here in Issaquah. We're going to have community dialogue. We're going to ask the kind of questions that all of you have raised this evening. And that may be a level that our partners either haven't thought about or perhaps aren't prepared to go down. And so I think the one thing that you can do and ask your representatives to the EFR board to do is to signal the scrutiny that you plan to bring to this. And so that whatever vote there is ultimately from Issaquah, understand that there will be lots of community dialogue, there will be lots of information shared, and the expectation is that our partner agencies will be doing the same thing. And I think that may be a very interesting message to send. And I think game theory, Council President, very much on my mind too, that may make some of them have to pump the brakes to ever so slightly, understanding that the level of scrutiny, the level of transparency that the Issaquah City Council intends to use may be different than our partners.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. I think with that, we are going to move on. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's been a great dialogue. And to be clear, this is the first council dialogue on this topic as a whole. This tonight that just happened, Council President Martins.
Can I just ask if our EFR reps feel that they are prepared for the meeting on the 11th?
I would say no. I think what I have heard is an ask for making an alternate proposal that does not include a recommendation. So that I have heard and heard enough members say yes. I don't know if council agrees with what city administrator said, and I don't know if that alternate proposal does not get accepted, how you want me to vote. So, no.
I mean, I thought I did. I mean, I appreciated what city administrator said, and that, you know, I feel, like I said, I've treated this decision as a point of while even if the board were to make a recommendation that this is merely like of the options we think this is viable, so let's pursue it. So even that in and of itself has not been a strong recommendation in my own mind. And so for me, being there and being very open to the rest of the board about the scrutiny we want to apply to it makes sense to me, and is already where my plans were. You know, I am on the financial committee for the budget just this cycle because I want to dig into the details of Eastside Fire and know everything. You know, were we to start a planning committee, I do want that level of scrutiny. So I am comfortable with that kind of a statement for our partners to know that we are going at this with a ton of detail and a ton of not suspicion, but like apprehension, like saying I personally have apprehension about this decision, and thus I think it's worth pursuing more information on it, but it's something that I want to do a lot of scrutiny on before making any kind of final recommendation to voters of what should happen. So for me, I am comfortable with that kind of a statement to be given at the board. But in terms of how the vote functions, that is a fair question in terms of what the vote would look like. But my perspective is that vote, again, does not tie anything. And even if the rest of the board says, let's go forward, they're still approving us to bring, you know, education materials here. And even if maybe one of those is emphasized, will gladly teach everybody about all the other options too. So, you know, that's comfortable for me.
Okay, and Council President, just before we go to Council President Martz, I think, to summarize, I think what Councilmember Walsh did say is I think there is support on the council to do Deputy President Chang's suggestion to say, can we please make this a motion that we want to educate our members in their full voting bodies of the options in front of us. And then I think it's now there's a shade of gray of if that motion doesn't pass, what happens next. Council President Martz.
So this is all like a game of diplomacy, if anybody's ever played diplomacy before. I have confidence, Councilmember Walsh, in your leadership, that you can go to that body and say, and it isn't whether they will agree with you and vote in support, but I think if you go and you say, I know so many of you are enthusiastic about this option, Issaquah is going to be maybe a hard sell. I encourage all of you to go watch Issaquah's council meeting and hear what Issaquah's concerns are. For instance, this evening, I'm going to propose X as a response from what I've heard from this council. But you should, all the rest of you on the EFR board should understand Issaquah's concerns. I think you will convey that appropriately, and whether that motion passes or fails, the very fact that you come back and say that as opposed to go, 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 will. All those board members I have great respect for. They've been doing this for a while, and they understand the questions to ask when one of the core cities says they have concerns and have questions and are not go, go, go. Is that helpful?
Yes, if you're still fine with conveying that message, yes, but if that amendment or alternate motion doesn't happen, still being able to move forward. Do you want me to abstain at that point if that motion doesn't happen? I think I, like Councilmember Adair, view this more like a committee vote that scrutinizes something and passes up a recommendation, but the council can absolutely tear things apart and educate and, all of that. So I feel comfortable with moving forward with a recommendation vote. I just want to make sure I am not making a movement that the council does not agree on. And y'all are trying to do this with a lack of information and, rumor information and all of that, and not knowing what a fire benefit charge and all of those things. So obviously, much like a committee, I've gone through a lot of those rigors, but don't make the final decisions.
I mean, to answer your question, I don't think you have a sense of the body that's ready to vote yes on that moving forward with any of those options, right? This body has not looked at those various options as a group. So I would hope that you would vote no. And if it still moves forward, you did your best to convey what this body said tonight, which is that we're confused and unsure which of those options are best and haven't been convinced that an RFA is best.
Councilmember Boyd.
Can part of the education aspect also be what the vote was? I don't know if that's helpful in this case where if it did come to an alternative proposal wasn't approved and the majority of the board moved with, and so if that's maybe not what Issaquah, this particular body, wanted to move forward with, but at least the education including this is what each member of the board had, what their concerns were about, or I don't know if that's helping assuage any of the concerns with this too.
Councilmember Adair.
To Council President Mart's point, and maybe I'm wrong in terms of this, but my view is that a no vote at that meeting is a vote saying we want to stay the course and we don't want to look into any other option. That's what a no vote represents at that meeting, is that we've looked at the options of funding and we're saying don't pursue them other than just stay the course, is what that no vote represents. Like saying the vote of yes is saying, okay, let's continue looking into an RFA or a fire district and now go educate the jurisdictions about it. So a vote of no at that meeting would be us saying, we don't want you to pursue any other potential funding source. And that's what a no vote would represent at that meeting. It'd be my perspective of that, which is why I think that doesn't quite convey what your intended message is, because that's the vote, again, is saying if we all vote, if all the districts say no at that meeting, basically no other funding source is going to be pursued or investigated. So that's what no represents to me in that vote.
But I think, first off, I think Council President Martz made it clear he thought Councilmember Walsh and yourself would have success in explaining to people that the amendment proposed by Deputy President Chang, which is we're completely supportive of getting educated. It seems like everyone on this dais is saying they want to be educated for more options. And and this council did not pick the June 11th decision date. That was picked by EFR, and that date was picked before this council was updated on with all the information they're asking for tonight. And as Deputy President Chang said, what's a fire benefit charge? So it seems like you can't make a decision on June 11th without, but Deputy President Chang, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, potentially, the proposal could be to split it into two votes, one on, do we want to get educated, and then a second vote on whether there's a recommendation, and then, you could vote on those items separately because they are completely different questions.
Walsh or Nichols? Walsh or Nichols, then we'll go to Walsh.
I think it's going to be really important, and I trust you folks fully to do this, to communicate with that vote perhaps more than what is strictly within the scope of that vote itself. So even if formally voting no means that we would be saying, say, the course, implicit in either a no or abstention can be many other things. We have limited tools to communicate that type of information that could put us in a better position further down the line if we do want to take harder positions or if we do want to push back in other ways. That could be a potentially good reason to take that position at that type of a meeting, even if, having read the room, you know that you're not going to win that vote, and it's not going to go a certain way. And this is simply getting back to Council President Martz's comments about the game theory of the situation. I appreciate this is going to be a potentially difficult negotiation, but we are in a situation where we should be able to drive a lot of that conversation, and communicating that is going to be beyond the formalities of any individual vote and what that would mean.
Councilmember Walsh.
Okay, I'm hearing a second option, which is split the vote. Again, happy to put that forward as an option, happy to represent this city as much as possible. How do I separate, as a subcommittee member, if I was part of SSP or something and reviewing this, I can vote yes on this is the recommendation that should come to full council, and then choose to vote no there. I guess I am concerned about the idea of voting no as a recommendation, if that ends up being the motion, just based on how rocky the Eastside fire relationship can be. 10 years ago, we had a certain city to the north of us suggest that they wanted to take their toy fire trucks and go home. And that would have increased our costs dramatically. So I guess I'm also looking at the implications of voting no, suggesting that we want to do things on our own.
I think people are making it clear they're not saying that. I think people are saying that I think it'll be crystal clear the Issaquah preference is we're not in a position to take a position, so please educate us. Deputy President Chang, going back to the original motion, I think seems like it's the best path forward, and I think the middle ground between voting no and voting yes is obviously just abstaining, saying, hey, we told you what we could support tonight. We could support a motion to get us better educated on what our options are. It seems like there is unanimous or close to unanimous support on this council for that option. And I still think there's a high probability that option will pass. I honestly do. I think the EFR board is a very reasonable group, and I think they want to move forward when they have as much consensus as possible. And I think I go back to what Council President Martz said. He was confident, I think, we can get this motion to be approved by the board, and I agree with him. Councilmember Walsh.
Okay, and I hear you on that. I can move forward. I also agree that is most likely, but at this point, I don't know, and I've heard a lot from the mayor and the council president, but not necessarily as much from everyone, whether there is authority or recommendation for a yes, no, or abstain vote here. And so without more clarity, I don't know how to do that next Thursday. So one proposal is I come back to the committee of the whole on the 8th and, get feedback then or get feedback here.
I'm looking at council leadership to see if they have a preference.
Sorry, say again.
I'm just saying I need feedback that if I cannot get that through, whether there should be
She's asking for a recommendation of no, abstain, or yes.
Yeah.
I think Councilmember Walsh is saying so there's consensus that the goal is for Deputy President Jang's amendment to hopefully pass. And then the question is, if it doesn't pass, I think Councilmember Walsh is fairly asking for guidance of no, abstain, or yes, and see if there's 4 votes for one of those options. So, Council President Martz.
I think it depends on what the motion is. I think if there's been a discussion that I am confused, and I was trying to look up the agenda for the meeting, and I couldn't tell from the agenda for the meeting what the actual proposed motion is, right? If it is this board would like to pursue a regional fire authority, then I think you should vote no. If the motion is this board would like to pursue options including a fire authority and a regional fire and a fire district and whatever else, if it's in the spirit of what I think you have heard from the majority of the council tonight, not just the mayor and myself, which is not being ready to go down a path for an RFA. But if it's in the spirit of exploration, then that follow-on vote, I personally would be comfortable with you voting yes. But if it's, we believe that a regional fire authority is the way for the east side of King County to go, then I think you should vote no, because I don't think this body has said that. But I think you know that, and I think you'll figure it out. I understand your concern tonight. I understand you don't want to leave here without more explicit guidance, and I appreciate that. But I think you will, in the moment, accurately reflect what this body has said tonight. Thank you.
Is there any other comments is that a good way to end it? Is folks okay ending it there? Okay. And I know right now Harvey's wishing he retired just 1 meeting earlier. He's like, man, I picked the wrong meeting to retire from the city of Issaquah. Sorry, Garth. Okay, we are going to Agenda Bill 9205. Oh, wait, Agenda Bill 9205, mid-budget request to add capital project manager facilities full-time employees. Autumn, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Autumn Monahan. I'm the Administrative Services Director, and I promise to be short this evening in my presentation, which is an overview of a proposed position for a capital project manager for facilities. The administration's recommendation is to authorize the addition of a capital project manager full-time position to the Administrative Services Department. As a little bit of background, I was before you on April 20th, where the council approved an agreement to purchase a building for City Hall located at 1055 Northwest Maple Street, freeing up 130 East Sunset Way exclusively for police use once we remodel it. The closing is underway for that purchase, I'm excited to say, so we're continuing on that process. Meanwhile, we have continued design now for the police remodel to better refine those costs with our design firm DLR Group, which helped us before with the task force work. We also put out an RFP for architect help for the City Hall space, planning, tenant improvements, furniture, and all the things needed to move to City Hall. Knowing the bulk of work that is ahead on both of those massive projects, we're here before you tonight proposing for an FTE for a proposed capital projects manager to support that work. As always, we'll be returning to the City Council as we refine these projects with further details and budget both for the City Hall move and for the police renovation. But as a first step, we're looking for resources. The duties of this position include ensuring successful delivery of these projects from planning all the way through to construction, coordinating with a whole lot of parties, including internal departments, consultants, contractors, permitting agencies, and of course the community. There is a whole lot of just budgeting, scheduling, all the things that come with project management, as well as contract negotiations, and really being the oversight for consultants. The priority projects for this position, we have plenty for the first several years. First with the City Hall move, and then with the police station remodel, which will take several years to complete. Quickly, a financial overview. This position will cost, fully loaded, about $230,000. If we are successful in hiring a position quickly, which is my goal, that would be about $115,000 this year. Expenses for this position will largely be paid by the associated capital projects. And so in the near term, that includes funds that we have set aside for the City Hall project. A quick timeline. In July, we hope to have a contract with an architect for that City Hall work to really drill down on the final space planning and improvements needed for that building. Hopefully, we're hiring a position come August, returning to you with more refined plan for that project. Moving to City Hall in the first quarter of 2027, and then returning to you as well with refined details for the police remodel. And with that, this is the proposed motion from administration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any? Councilmember Dare.
I had a quick question. Now, you answered it via email because I was asking about the numbers, because like in the provided description, the salary was 124 to 164K, but the ask was 230K. The answer was that that's, so, you know, payroll taxes and benefits, it's really $60,000 to $70,000 on top of the salary?
Yes.
Okay.
But I will add, this is a much better value, knowing that we have this body of work for several years than only paying consultants.
True. Okay, but just wanted to triple check that that was the value of all of that.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Adair, I learned that the first week of January, and it's a depressing reality, but it is a reality. Council President Martz.
I will just say the carrying cost in private industry is higher. So that's actually kind of a deal compared to in private industry.
Don't tell my employees.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so is there a motion? Council President Martz.
I move to authorize the inclusion of an additional capital project manager to the city's 2026 staffing levels.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please. Oh, yeah, I'll just repeat the motion is to authorize the inclusion of additional capital project manager to the city's 2026 staffing levels. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And that passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. Yes, we are taking a 5-minute break. We will be back for the final item. Okay. This Issaquah City Council's 5-minute break is over. We're now going to invite Deputy City Clerk Cassidy Miller to present on this item. It's amendments to Council Rules of Procedure, Agenda Bill 9137.
Right. Thank you, Council. I'm Cassidy Miller, Deputy City Clerk, presenting on the Council Rules of Procedure before you tonight. At the May 4th, sorry, I do not have a visual presentation. At the May 4th City Council meeting, staff and the Council Rules Ad Hoc Committee members presented the committee's recommendations and answered questions. The City Council then requested amended language to Section 3.11, confidentiality, to provide a process for council members to receive a non-confidential version of information upon request. There was agreement that this item be postponed to the June 1st council meeting so that language could be provided. The following language has been added to Section 3.11, confidentiality. If a council member wishes to share information publicly that includes confidential content, the city council member may request city staff provide a version of the information that omits the confidential content. The resolution provided in your packet has been updated to include the revised language, which is Exhibit C. Tonight, the City Council can choose to approve the resolution adopting the updated council rules as presented in Exhibit A, or can offer amendments. 3 potential amendments were submitted to the clerk's office in advance of tonight's meeting. These were distributed to the council for review earlier today. Should these amendments or any others be made, I can bring them up on the screen to help ensure that they're captured correctly. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the council. Are there any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. I think, it looks like everyone's looked at the rules, so I think we could just go straight to a motion. Oh, Council President Walsh. I mean, Councilmember Walsh.
So you're proposing, we had something tabled from the last meeting, correct? And so is this a motion that replaces what we had on deck, or did we not have something tabled?
I think this is the entire rules and procedures that were created. Is that correct? I think it's everything with an amendment already updated in the system.
Go ahead. I'm not sure either. I think we have 3 amendments tonight for what was presented in the packet. And so I think that there is something included that was in the packet, was incorporated based on the council's direction, and then there are 3 additional amendments, is my understanding.
Okay. I am also a very visual person, so it would be helpful if we're going to have a motion to have something up on the screen and then potentially have something available if we are to wordsmith or add amendments. Because all I heard was the confidentiality stuff. I don't know what the other portion, but I guess a motion hasn't been made, so that would happen in that realm.
Yes, to my understanding, that's correct. And I apologize, I am not aware if there was already a motion on the table or if the item was tabled before a motion could be made. So I apologize for that. But the presented motion was, and I can pull that on the screen, that was provided by the city clerk, is to approve the resolution and then adopt the ordinance. And then from that, amendments or new motions or amendments to this motion can be made to further revise the rules of procedure before anything is adopted.
So I think, City Clerk Miller, the question, are you looking for the original motion and then the amendments? Or are you looking for?
I can do whatever you need. I'm just looking for my share button.
I would suggest that we take a non-breaking 2-minute break to let the clerk's office figure out whether we have a standing motion or not.
Or we can table the entire item to your next meeting.
I mean, I would like to get at it tonight. There's just a question of whether the
Okay.
original, whether there's a motion in already. I think it's worth letting the clerk take a couple of minutes to figure that out. And then we can either continue that motion or move a new motion.
Okay, we're on a 2-minute break. We'll return. Okay, we're back in session. City Administrator, update us on where we're at.
Yes, there is no pending motion. Reading from the staff report, at the May 4th council meeting, staff and the Rules Committee presented the committee's recommendations. The council then requested amended language to Section 3.11 confidentiality to provide a process for council members to receive a non-confidential version of the information upon request. There was agreement that this item be postponed until June 1 so that language could be provided. The language was provided at Section 3.11 confidentiality. If a council member wishes to share information publicly that includes confidential content, the city council member may request city staff provide a version of that information that omits the confidential content. The attached resolution has been updated to include the revised language. So what is before you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, is that revision. And the recommendation is to adopt with that language included from your May 4 meeting.
Council President Martz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 2026-11, amending various sections of the City Council Rules of Procedure as recommended by the Council Rules Ad Hoc Committee, and repealing resolution number 2008-15 relating to the policy for council expenditures, and adopt ordinance number 3140, amending sections 2.06.110 and 2.06.120 of the Issaquah Municipal Code relating to city council meetings in order to align them with the city council rules of procedure.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or additional amendments? Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. I am motioning to amend section 3.11 confidentiality. Do you want me to read the amendment in its entirety? Okay.
There it is. I think he just wanted to show, go ahead, Councilmember Nichols, but that's up there, and we will have to read it before we vote on the amendment, obviously, but for right now, you can just speak to it.
Okay, so I'll speak briefly. So first of all, I appreciate the city's additions to what the ad hoc committee brought to us on the 4th. The amendment that I propose is simply intended to strengthen some of the concerns that were brought up by Councilmembers Adair, Council President Martz, and Councilmember Walsh, to strengthen slightly the city council's expectations of the administration. Really, all this is intended to do is to make something explicit that, from my read of this, is at the moment somewhat implicit in the rule, that information is confidential only if it could be withheld under the Public Records Act, with a narrow exception for executive session and litigation timing. And that's intended to answer Councilmember Walsh's question about what makes something not confidential, as well as Councilmember Adair's concern about labeling something confidential just because it's awkward, et cetera, though that is, of course, strictly hypothetical. And Council President Martz's points about tying this to the Public Records Act, which matters given the penalty here can't be forfeiture of office in an extreme case. It also is intended to give a member who questions the designation a clear path to ask the city attorney to review it and get a shareable version if needed, and put that in writing to avoid any lack of clarity there. I also appreciate City Attorney Turpin's review earlier today and suggestions to the amendment I originally proposed, which I incorporated, and I would urge adoption.
Councilmember Walsh.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Councilmember Walsh.
That answers all of the questions that were brought up. It's very clear language, and I appreciate the clarity both for staff and council members. I think this does a good job.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, the amendment before this body is to amend section 3.11, confidentiality of the council rules of procedure and resolution number 2026-11 by adding to the end of the first paragraph. In doing so, they will identify the laws under which information will be withheld in response to a public records request. Information will be designated confidential only where it would be withheld in whole and irrelevant part in response to a public records request under Chapter 42.56 RCW, or where it is reasonably likely to become the subject of a specific upcoming executive session or relates to a pending or potential litigation. And adding to the end of the second paragraph, a council member who questions whether information has been properly designated as confidential or wishes to know the specific sections of the RCW or other law under which the information is designated as confidential or in any time limit for such designation may ask the city attorney to review the designation, may request a written explanation and a version that omits only the confidential contents of the remainder may be shared. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? And that amendment is adopted. Other amendments?
I move amendment 3.1A. I'm so sorry. This is my first time doing this. Do I keep reading it?
We can see it, so you can speak to the amendment. I'll repeat it before we vote.
All right. I had asked for some clarity on, effectively, this just changes council leadership to council president to better clarify when you would like to attend remotely, who gives the thumbs up for that?
Councilmember Walsh.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, not seeing any. I will read the amendment is to section 3.10, parentheses A, virtual remote attendance at the council rules of procedure and resolution 2026-11 by replacing council leadership with council president in the sentence. Virtual attendance granted for reasons other than those listed above. Medical issue, illness, or quarantine or travel in city business may not exceed a total of 5 meetings per year without approval of council leadership to be considered an excused absence. So it's just basically, you know, replacing council leadership with council president. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay. That amendment is adopted. Council President Martz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to move to the proposed amendment to section 4.08, sub C, sub 1. And following this evening's pattern, I will speak to it. I said earlier tonight that I would say the 3 things that have been the biggest deal to council in the 17 years that have been on. Oak Crest pedestrian death, Chell sites. It was only one meeting, but it was the famous 7-hour and 45-minute meeting, and of course ALPRs. So in all of these, we were able to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish without setting finite time limits on public engagement. We did it through respecting what we heard and repeating it back to the public and letting people have nonverbal support for it. I have seen people use time limits and game it by the choice of speakers and people wind up feeling scuzzy. So if we didn't need it for those things, I don't think we need to have it in the code, which is why I support this amendment. Thank you.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, there's been a motion, a second.
I'll speak to it if I could.
Go ahead, Councilmember Joe.
I appreciate the manner the council leadership has been able to guide and navigate us through these big issues, including the recent conversation with the flock cameras. I do have a great deal of trust in the leadership that they will be able to guide the public participation in a way where everyone feels seen and heard and valued along the way. And so I am okay with the amendment that's before the committee, and we'll be supporting it. Thank you. Before the council. Thank you.
Okay, not saying any other discussion. The motion is to approve amendment 4.08, parentheses C, parentheses 1, rules of public participation, amend section 4.08 C-1, rules for public participation of the council rules of procedure and resolution 2026-11 by striking and to set an overall maximum duration for the public comment period. If a maximum duration is set, efforts will be made to ensure there is an equal opportunity for individuals to speak in support of an opposition to an issue. So that both those sentences would be removed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. That amendment is adopted. Council President Martz.
The hour is late, but I just want to thank once again Clerk Gieser for, she is a sort of regionally, maybe even statewide recognized expert in the field of clerking. And this is the third or the fourth major ad hoc in the last 5 or 6 years that she has helped walk through and done a sterling job. So although she's not here tonight, I want to say thank you so much. We're so lucky to have her as our chief clerk.
Excellent. Okay. And there is no further discussion. The motion for the council is to approve resolution number 2026-11 as amended, amending various sections of the City Council Rules of Procedure as recommended by the Council Rules Ad Hoc Committee and repealing resolution number 2008-15 relating to the policy for council expenditures and adopt ordinance number 3140 amending sections 2.06.110 and 2.06.120 of the Issaquah Municipal Code relating to the City Council meetings in order to align them with the City Council Rules and Procedures. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And that passes unanimously. The next item of business is, the new rules are in effect. And they've already caused a beverage spill.
Yeah, I was going to point of order you.
Okay, it is impressive to see how quickly the council has already adopted to the new rules. And with that, we're going to go to an old rule, which is committee reports. Councilmember Boyd.
I think this is my last week. I'll have no report. I don't really actually know how that works with being an alternate, but I'm appointed as alternate to EFER. And I guess my update is that I am in the queue for being appointed to the Puget Sound Regional Council's Transportation Policy Board, but there's a few other steps I need to clear before that becomes a reality.
Oh, excellent.
Yep.
All right, Councilmember Adair.
I have one report. I had a meeting with the WRIA 8 Salmon Recovery on May 21st. There were 2 presentations on one was on legislative updates and planning for next year's session. Another was on coastal streams and nearshore restoration projects. But the main agenda was approval of the Grant Review Committee's funding recommendations, which included nearly $6.5 million of grants to go before the King County Flood Control District and Salmon Recovery Boards this was their recommendations for what should be awarded. Included in those were a few different Issaquah-specific grants, including the funding for the Issaquah Miyawaki Forest, Lake Sammamish, UWRP, repairing stewardship areas along Issaquah and Tibbetts Creeks, weed treatment at the mouth of Issaquah Creek, sorry, we're getting late.
It's okay, you're fine. You're a safe
Monitoring
space.
of 6 PPDQ in Issaquah Creek, and Laughing Jacobs Restoration Construction. And the next meeting is an in-person one on July 16th, though I don't believe I can actually attend that in person. We will see how that shakes out. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no committees to report on tonight.
Councilmember Walsh.
I can see why you had a hard time getting to the thing over here. Okay, I have 3 reports. The Planning, Development, and Environment Committee meets tomorrow. Topics include the Goals and Outcomes Chart, which we made recommendations for modifications at the last meeting, and they're coming back with those changes. The clarifying amendments to Title 18 are Land Use Code, and the first 2 code ordinances for the Building Better group, which is on step backs and open amenity space. Eastside Fire and Rescue will meet next Thursday, June 11th. I think we've talked about that one enough, so I'll leave that there. Arch, Council of Electeds, the Regional Coalition for Housing, met March 21st, and we received a presentation on financing and local funding for affordable housing. We also provided input on how regional contributions to groups like Arch should be given credit for affordable housing investments at the state and county level. And so Arch is going to advocate and kind of lobby on behalf of the cities to say, hey, if we contribute to housing that is built in Bellevue or Redmond or any other Arch city, we should get credit for it. Now, that being said, we still need to determine if the state or King County are really, how they are evaluating our 5-year mid comp plan to see whether or not we are effective at doing our jobs, whether they're really counting number of units, or rather are we making movement toward policy. So I don't know how that will end up going, but that concludes my report.
All right, Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. The Mobility and Infrastructure Committee met on May 12th. We discussed the TIP this evening. The other item that was on the agenda was discussing frontage requirements and taking down power lines in front of public facilities as it relates to Sammamish Water and Sewer District. That'll be coming back later to the council in June. The June 11th meeting is canceled for M&I. LTAC met today, and on the good side of things, the committee decided to open a new round of funding for what we call the second shoulder season, which is a little bit later in the year. $100,000 of funding will be opened up. Awards can go up to $55,000 in order to encourage large projects or innovative projects that might help nonprofits or community groups. The idea is to kind of grease the wheel or prime the pump, so to speak, for economic vitality and helping our local businesses. June 10th, those applications will open up. Approximately, they'll be due around July 10th and reviewed by LTAC at the end of July. Cascade Water Alliance board meeting will be June 24th, and June 16th will be the Finance and Intergovernmental Committee that I serve on. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Deputy President Chang.
Great. 3 reports from me tonight. First, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority Governing Board met on Friday, May 22nd. We received briefings on the Continuum of Care, 2025 accomplishments and 2026 priorities, and on severe weather shelters in the region. The King County Flood Control District Advisory Committee met on Friday, May 22nd. We received an overview of the flood control district project process, and we also talked about some potential tours of flood infrastructure across the county. So I might get to go on some tours, which is very exciting. And the Eastside Transportation Partnership is meeting next Friday, June 12th at 8 a.m. in Woodinville. So we'll go up there and see everyone in person. And that concludes my report.
Council President Martins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee will be meeting next Wednesday, June 10th at 7 p.m. I will not be able to attend, so Councilmember Adair will be representing Issaquah on deck that evening. That concludes my report.
Excellent. The mayor's report, the Park Barn Renewal Open House is tomorrow night at Pickering Barn from 6 to 7 p.m. and we'll have all the projects will be posted and people can come and ask questions, learn about what projects are in the Park Barn Renewal. Garage Pride at the Community Center lawn. That'll celebrate Pride Month in Issaquah. The Garage Pride is this Friday. All ages bring the Issaquah community together to celebrate queer joy with an afternoon of connection, creativity, and celebration. Enjoy yard games, crafts, freebies, and a taco truck. This will be happening on Friday, June 5th at the Community Center lawn from 3 to 6 p.m., organized by the Teens of the Garage. And 50 Years of Issaquah Singers concert. So celebrate 50 years of music, community, and tradition with the Issaquah Singers 50th anniversary concert. The special performance will commemorate 5 decades of choral excellence. And so it's the Golden Anniversary concert is this Saturday, June 6th at the Faith Church on Issaquah Pine Lake Road, beginning at 2:30 p.m. And that concludes the mayor's report. Good of the order. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank you for your participation as a keynote speaker at the Memorial Day celebration. I thought you did a great job recognizing the service of all of our branches of the armed forces, and you made some very nice comments. I also want to acknowledge the 3 other council members that were there. We had a quorum, but we did not discuss any business. Thank you, Deputy Council President Jang, Councilmember Nichols, and Councilmember Boyd for attending that. It was a great event to go to. I also wanted to follow our newly adopted rules. Under 3.12, I believe, I'm supposed to let people know that I would like to attend the National League of Cities in November, and if others want to join and go to that, it will be an expense over $500, and we would want to schedule it go to the order at an appropriate time for council. So if others are interested in going to Nashville, please let leadership or the administration know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will say we learned at that memorial service from the community volunteers who water the little new flowers around the Blue Memorial that they needed access to a water tap, which they have been given this week. And so that problem was raised and solved. That was, really appreciated from that group. So the upcoming council meetings, Monday, June 8th, Committee of the Whole will be right here. Issaquah Climate Action Plan, Economic Development Plan Action, Downtown Issaquah Association will present Operations and Potential 2026. Monday, June 15th is the City Council regular meeting. We're going to have a reception for the Issaquah Hall of Fame winner, Fred Nystrom, at 6:30 p.m., and then we will discuss the Issaquah District and City Joint Use Agreement, which we met with the school district this afternoon, and we left it on the agenda for June 15th, so that's a good sign. There is no executive session tonight, and being no further business before this council is adjourning at 10:31. I cannot claim this was a meeting of brevity, but it is still adjourned.